Hi everyone, and welcome to Pod of the Damned. I'm your host Ian, and joining me for this special bonus episode is my co-host Candy. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm great. I like we were just talking there. I'm really excited about this episode. This is the second episode in our top 5 sort of side sub-series of episodes. I think a lot of people who were listening to the show previously were really keen for us to start doing this sort of thing again. The last one we did, which was our first one, was on horror remakes, and it did really, really well. You guys responded to it really, really well. So I'm super excited for this one because remakes in that first episode, that's a subject that always, that really
It's
ruffles.
touchy,
That's a touchy subject amongst the horror community. But
but I also think this one's going to get a little touchy too.
but I think today's one will divide everyone so much. So to if you haven't read the title of this episode before hitting play, today we're talking about our top 5 most overrated horror movies. Before we get into a bit of a further discussion, we'll do the housekeeping, we'll get the socials out of the way. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do so. We're on X at Damn Podcast. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com. Subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/pod of the damned. And follow us on TikTok, which is at Podcast of the Damned. I've been relatively active on the TikTok, and we've had a couple of decent turn up there as well. So please go follow us on any of those platforms. Candy, where can people find you?
You can find me sometimes on Damn Podcast on X. Trying to be better about that. I've just been doing a lot of traveling, but you can find me at Candy Final Girl on X and Candy the Final Girl on Instagram. I have a link tree that's linktree/Candy the Final Girl. Occasionally there's some things on Facebook, but it's usually from my Instagram. So just usually those two places.
Awesome. So yeah, as we said, we're going to be talking about top 5 most overrated horror movies. If you didn't listen to our remakes episodes, what the fuck are you doing? Go back and listen to it. But
Yeah, definitely do.
but if
Fun.
if you're unaware of the formats of these episodes, me and Candy are going to go through our lists, our top 5 lists, and we're going to go through them, taking turns from number 5 all the way into number 1. There's going to be spoilers for all of the movies that or I'm assuming all of the movies that we're going to discuss today. We're going to do some honorable mentions at the end, and we'll read out some of the movies that
I
you.
have kind of a long list of honorable mentions. I tried to cut it back,
I kept my honorable mentions relatively short, but we do have a lot of I do have quite a few comments of movies from our listeners as well. So I thought I would keep my honorable mentions relatively short, and I would squeeze in some of those. And then after we've done that, we'll do a little bit of a chit chat. Candy's got some memorabilia to show us at the end of the episode that we're going to get to see, and we'll talk a little bit about again what's coming up on the show and some other horror related things. I think we are possibly the two people in podcasting, specifically horror podcasting, that can go off in the most tangents.
oh yeah, but I think that's one of the coolest things.
you know I think we are experts at making a 45-minute episode last for 3 hours. We've definitely done it before.
It's absolutely a skill.
It is such a skill, and I think it's one.
And we get on so well that we can just keep going.
We can. And the thing is, the people don't see is when we've just finished, a 3 hour long episode, we will sit on call and have yet another hour's worth of conversation
Yes, we will.
once it's done. So, it's just chat, 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 chat. But we will go straight into the main portion of today's episode to talk about our top 5 most overrated horror movies. So we're going to start with our number 5s. Candy, do you want to go first this time? I can't remember which one of us went first last time, if it was me or you. But if you would like to go first and tell us, was it you?
I cannot recall,
Okay.
but I'm fine with going first because I think I'm gonna piss you off right off the bat, so we might as well get that out of the
Oh
way.
God. Okay. Okay, you go first. So tell us what your number 5 most overrated horror movie is, please.
I would like to preface very quickly. Um, you know me. I gotta preface things. I'm gonna preface this by saying I struggled over this list for like 3 fucking days. So in number 5, I put Halloween 2018.
Oh.
I and I know that people are like, even if they didn't like Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, they liked 2018. I had all this build up to it. It's not my franchise except for Halloween 3, but it almost doesn't count. So Halloween 2018, I went into it really high, like, okay, this is going to be great. But I kept waiting for it to get better. And it just wasn't, it did not live up to the hype. Um, it had its moments where it was like, yeah, this is going to be okay. Yeah, oh, all right. So it was a lot of like there were a couple of cool moments like the bathroom scene with the teeth and all that was cool,
Mhm.
but I just like that's kind of one of the few highlights for me. It's just the fact that everybody went on and on and on about this, and it just wasn't it for me. It was like I can't get that time in my life back, not to mention that I watched the other 2 films, but I had to leave those out. I specifically am going after 2018 because it started that shit train and it just wasn't very good. And we know that I hate David Gordon Green. And this was like, oh, David Gordon Green's going from comedy to horror. And it's like, that can work. Look at Jordan Peele. But this isn't it, folks. Like Halloween 2018, sorry, it's way overrated.
um, I suppose I'm gonna have to sort of try and, because I think the thing is as well, when we were talked about remakes, we were generally in agreement with a lot of what we were saying, even though we picked different things.
Right.
So this is maybe where this episode's gonna get a
This
little
is going to be
interesting.
a different kind of episode.
Um, Listen, out of that sort of trilogy of movies, Halloween 2018 is definitely the best of those trilogy of movies. It is a trilogy of diminishing returns every time you return to it. Halloween Kills, I still think is good, but is not as good as 2018. Halloween Ends, listen,
I wanted to stab my eyes out.
I'm not on the exact same complete shit train that everyone else is about Halloween Ends. However, I do acknowledge that it is not a great movie, it's not a good movie, and it's not a movie that anyone really wanted to sort of finish off because it was just completely out of the blue. No one wanted the story that we actually got in that movie. We wanted the big final showdown, didn't we, between Michael Myers and Laurie
Yeah, and it
Strode.
was it was really lame. It was really like just never really happened for me. I was actually really bored. I saw at the drive-in because I go from starting in spring all the way to fall when they start doing, a lot of the Halloween movies and then they'll show kind of older movies. And I went and saw that and I was so fucking like, can we just go home now? And it was the first movie. It was so disappointing. But 2018, like just with all that build up, it just let me down. I was not interested. So then when Kills came out, I was like, don't want to watch it, but I did. And when Ends came out, I was like, fuck my life.
I think there's also something to be said for something just not being your franchise as well, though, because I went into this trilogy even when it got to Ends, even though Kills wasn't great, I still went into Halloween Ends just. I was like a giddy school child. Like I was so happy that I was going to the cinema to go see a brand new Halloween movie. Like I was absolutely in my element. I think the thing for me is as well is when you look at what was the last Halloween movie before um 2018 came out, it was Halloween Resurrection, right? And I think the last
Yeah,
I think
that was a fucking garbage fire.
yeah, so I think when we look at that and you think, right, we've got fucking Busta Rhymes roundhouse kicking Michael Myers out of a top floor window and giving us these one-liner catchphrases, that for me is not it. I'm well known on podcasting for saying, these really, really shit slasher movies can sometimes be my favorites because of how ridiculous they are. Like Jason X, for example. That's possibly one of my
Okay, like I'm not a huge Jason fan. I've grown into liking Jason, and that took years of podcasting to do because I fucking hated them. But like with Jason, there's something fun and stupid about it. Halloween 2018 was trying to be like really serious. There wasn't a lot of fun to it.
I
And
think,
so it was just so built up. And it's like it's not even because it wasn't my franchise. I mean, I'm basing this just on a horror film itself. It just kind of like it was like what my kids would call edging.
Mhm.
Um it was like it was just edging into trying to be cool, and it just never got cool.
See,
So I'm not even basing, I'm trying to disregard like kills and ends. I'm
yeah, yeah.
just saying
I,
2018, I was like, hmm.
I still disagree. I think when you look at, you know, those last couple of Halloween movies that come out before and just how ridiculous they were, and then I think when you look at, you know, because Halloween was really sort of our first big sort of slasher remake. It did sort of restart that trend of the big slasher remakes. I know we had the Friday the 13th remake that had come out, what, 2009 that come out? And that,
Yeah, I believe it was
I actually thought, you know,
2009.
for as stupid and dumb as it was, that was at least fun. But then you have, you know, a Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Yeah.
You know, for the Nightmare on Elm Street remake come out in 2010, which is just fucking hot shit. Like, that's really fucking
Oh
bad.
dear
You know,
God.
and people sort of left these big properties alone for a while. And I think 2018 really did sort of rekindle that, because now we've gotten more, you know, Child's Play material. Now we've gotten more, you know, Scream material, and you know, Texas
But
Chainsaw.
we've also got our fair amount of shit from it
Oh,
too, though. I
100%,
mean, I'm
100%.
sorry, David Gordon Green doing an Exorcist
But
legacy sequel.
But when we've come,
Fuck
I think
him.
when we come from these sort of ridiculous like these ridiculous movies that, you know, the sort of late 90s and early 90s were known for, there was a return to the sort of serious nature of the Halloween movie. I think Michael Myers was much more brutal in this movie than he had been in a lot of times. And I think there are a lot of memorable scenes. You mentioned one of them, you know, the teeth scene in the bathroom. I think that's a great scene. I think the opening
It was
scene,
gritty, it was gory. I was into it.
I think the
But that
open
was really the only moment where it kind of piqued my interest.
I think the opening scene for me is a really cool scene where he's, you know, holding that mask up and he's sort of demanding that that he answers it. That's a good scene for me. I really like the scene where, you know, there is that moment of levity in the middle, isn't there, with the babysitter and, you know, the kids, and, you know, they have this little moment, and they do try and have a couple of little moments of levity. It doesn't all land for me, to be honest, but, you know, I think I'm going to disagree with you anyway. I'm not going to say, you know, we're not here
I
to.
knew that you would, and I knew that it would be like right off the bat, Candy's gonna say the wrong thing.
um,
But
but again, you know,
the thing,
I can appreciate, you know, if a movie, you know, some people just don't fuck with it, just in the same way that people will rave and rave and rave about Friday the 13th movies. And I really am not a fan of Friday the 13th movies in general until they go.
in general, I'm not either, but I have two that I absolutely fucking adore, and they're the two that everyone hates.
Yeah, exactly. Until they go like stupid and ridiculous, and then that's when I get on board with that franchise. So I can totally understand people who maybe aren't the biggest fans. I'm not going to be a fan of this. So, whilst I disagree, I respect your decision to put Halloween 2018 at number 5.
Just being honest.
Well, with that being said, we'll go on to my number 5, and my number 5 is really, really
You're gonna pick a Romero movie just to get back at me, aren't you?
Yeah, it's Night of the No, I'm joking.
Oh my God, no.
I almost would pick it just to see what your reaction was, but
You don't want that reaction at all.
I couldn't
You
do
do
it to
not
myself.
want it.
No, but
Especially like considering that I am under the influence of drugs right now. Just to be fair, everybody, it's not recreational drugs. I
prescribed
take it from my
drugs.
back. I'm just a little loopy at the moment.
My one's quite apt for movies that a movie we've got coming up on the podcast. It's a very modern movie. So my number 5 pick for most overrated horror movie is X from 2022.
Oh,
Now, are you okay, Candy?
I just there was a little stutter in my heart
um,
because I thought like that was a great fucking slasher. Plus, it brought back hagsploitation, which I fucking love. A little weird subgenre of a subgenre, but yeah, like how X, like how. Sort
so,
of how you felt about me saying Halloween 2018.
so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about this one because we do have episodes about the franchise coming up, and I'm going to go into huge details about that. And I'm also going to preface this by saying that I think X is a perfectly fine movie. I don't think it's a bad film by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is where, we might differ slightly on our lists. I think you're picking films that you really, really don't like, and I'm maybe picking films that I like. I just think X got way more love than it actually deserved to get. I think it's a perfectly fine film. I just don't think it's good enough for that level of love. I think Mia Goth is decent in it. I've no idea though why Mia Goth has become this sort of darling of the horror fans.
I
Based
kind of do because she's so fucking unhinged. Not just in films, but you know who she's with. Like, she's like married to Shia LaBeouf, and
yeah.
she's had two of his kids. That's like level of unhinged that none of us could reach in our personal lives. So, like, oh yeah, Shia LaBeouf, I'm gonna have his babies. But not only that, but I think she has like this every role that she plays, like when you think of like Infinity Pool or Pearl. I won't go into too much detail about that, but I mean, I just think there's a level of unhingedness that really is so entertaining. I think that people grab onto that because it's so over the top and it's so fun. I think I have a lot of fun with her, and I think a lot of people do.
I think a lot of people do. I think you're absolutely right. But I think the thing is, for this movie, I find so many of the characters in this movie so unlikable as well. Like, I really don't relate to a lot of these characters, and in the end, I'm really
Not
just
even I mean, like that. See, I'm the opposite. Like, I thought Kid Cudi was great in it with that prosthetic dick when he walks out just naked. It's hilarious. And it's so funny. Plus, it's got like the porn aspect, and they're like, wonder what's on this camera. I'm like, I don't know. And then the dual roles, I don't know. I just
I
thought
think
like
I think the
for
Jewel.
me, I thought it was an appropriate level of now, and I'm not trying to go off. Like I said, I'm a little under the influence, but I do think it was an appropriate level of love for it. But I understand
I
how
think
you
I
could
think
feel
for
that way.
me, I think for me, a lot of the humor didn't really land in the way I think it maybe landed for a lot of other people. I like the dual role aspect that Mia Goth did, and I appreciate what she did in the prosthetics, and the makeup was really great. And as I've said, I'm not in any way, shape, or form stating that this is a bad film, but I don't think that comedy really landed for me. For me, I didn't have a lot of characters that I could really sort of grab onto as being, I really want them to survive. I didn't have that sort of you go girl moment for Mia Goth in this movie. Like, it just didn't really happen for me. And then, you think you've really got the other darling of horror at the moment also in this movie in
About
Jenna.
to say, I was curious about your thoughts. How do you feel about Jenna Ortega? Because, I mean, like speaking of overrating, like, do you think that she's overrated as a darling of horror, like you think Mia Goth
So I
is?
don't think Jenna Ortega is overrated as a sort of darling of horror. I think she is for me the quintessential sort of icon of horror right now, not Mia Goth. However,
I'm gonna say both.
I really not again don't really like her character in this film. Like, again, I'm not really rooting for her. So I think all of those things for me, and I just sit there and I think, yeah, that was fine. Yeah, I'll revisit it, of course, and I have done since because, we've covered it on the show, and we're going to be covering, Pearl and Maxine on the show in future weeks coming up. But for me, like, and when we did our year-end awards for 2022, X wiped the floor with everything. And of course, all of our year-end awards is completely chosen by our listeners. It all goes to votes. We don't get any say over that. And I was just shocked by how many people it seemed to have won over when I looked at it. I was just like, yeah, it was fine, but when you look at the sort of previous years of horror that's gone by and the great movies that have come out in some of those years, X just doesn't sort of stack up for me. So that's why it's going to be at my number 5.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say just really quickly with X, I think it was right place, right time for me and for a lot of others. So, and that when we talk about overrated horror, it's overrated by a lot of people. So, when we're bringing these aspects to it, like why it's overrated, like I pick things I hate because it's like I was so overexposed to them. But like, yeah, I mean, okay, I can respect your opinion.
Okay. So we've started off with two very disagreeing movies, but we're
Yeah.
we're being respectful so far.
So far.
So far, so
I'm
good.
gonna get heated later, but probably not at you. I don't
We're
think
still
you'll agree.
friends. We still have a podcast. So we're going good.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, then, Candy, would you like to tell us your number 4 pick for most overrated horror movie?
My number 4 pick, and actually every pick from this point out, if you know any of my history in podcasting or my writing, you will know these things. Number 4, I picked The Monster Squad. Growing up in the 80s, it was like it was one of those early like tween horror films. It was maybe the first tween horror film. And I think I because I was watching like The Exorcist, and I was watching sort of like these gore films, that when Monster Squad came along, I was like, this is for fucking kids. And it really, the jokes aren't funny. It's not scary enough. Why does Dracula is known for fighting with dynamite? I because yeah, he never bites or drinks any blood. He throws fucking dynamite, you know, and that pisses me off. And I just, people are obsessed with this movie, particularly of my generation. And I'm in this weird little pocket generation. So I'm early millennial. So it's like this weird mix of Zennials. Zennials fucking love Monster Squad. And it is a terrible movie. It is not fun. And when I showed it to my children, thinking, okay, this is a good gateway, they're interested in horror, they fucking hated it. I mean, I don't hate it. I think it has a couple of redeeming qualities. I have a huge crush on Rudy in it. Um, and when I was a kid, that was the only reason I watched it so many times, was because I was like, damn, he's hot in his penny loafers and his cigarette behind his ear kind of vibe. He was hot, but to young Candy. But yeah, Monster Squad overall just kind of sucks, and it sucks for me especially because of Fred Decker, the director. Because right before this, he did one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Night of the Creeps. So he went from Night of the Creeps to this steaming pile of shit, and people are it's just so beloved. There's documentaries, there's so much nostalgia for it. I have zero nostalgia for it. I just don't get it. I didn't get it then, and I don't get it now, the love for it. I just think it's way overrated, and I think a lot of people rate that on nostalgia, and I don't think they've watched it in any recent times. They're judging it from how they felt when they were like maybe 9 or 10
Yeah,
back
because
in the
I do feel, and I obviously someone who is ever so slightly younger, and I don't have that nostalgia for it. So when I did go and watch it for the first time, I was a bit like, this is a pile of fucking shit. Like, what the fuck am I
right.
watching? I do feel that there are certain people who are starting to come around on that, though. I've seen a lot.
Really? Because I have not met those people. I would love to.
We must have some. We must swim in slightly different circles. I have seen a slight change, not hugely, of the opinion on, especially on sort of social media and things, of people, starting to be like, I remember watching this. I think Nico said this as well, possibly at some point in the last few episodes, where
Yeah, I think we did mention it
yeah, where
briefly
he
on
was
the
like
show.
he really really loved that movie when he was young, but didn't watch it again for a long long time, and then when he eventually
Yep.
revisited as an adult, he was like, what the fuck am I watching? So I do think you're possibly right. I think there is a lot of nostalgia. I think it's a movie that sort of really appealed, like you say, to that sort of generation and that sort of age range at the time. And it's just something that hasn't lasted the test of time. What do you think about the reboot? What's your
D- Are they doing one?
I thought they were doing one. Am I thinking of something? No, I'm getting confused. Sorry, they're not. I was getting
Okay, I was
confused.
like, wait, because one, if they were, I would know because I avoid the Monster
Yeah,
Squad shit like a fucking plague.
I just had the Toxic Avenger in my head. Sorry, I just got
Okay,
completely
yeah,
confused.
Toxie, I'm cool with. I
um,
like Toxie.
I only just got confused about it there, guys. I knew what I was talking about in the previous
Are
sentences.
you sure you're not the one on drugs? No, I'm
I
kidding.
mean, quite possibly.
Kidding.
I could probably do with some. But no, I do think there is sort of that the nostalgia for that one definitely plays a major part. I think that's a huge, huge thing for that one.
And that's what I say to people when I meet them at horror cons, or I talk to them because, I guest on a lot of other shows sometimes. And, I had my own other show for like, 5 years previous to coming to Pod of the Damned. So I was always like, have you watched it recently though?
Mm-hmm.
Because and a lot of people will be like, oh, but that's not what it's about. I'm like, it kind of is. I mean, I think a good movie, like again, saying Fred Decker, who did Night of the Creeps the year before this, Night of the Creeps fucking holds up. I watch Night of the Creeps. That is a comfort movie to me. I put it on when I'm having a bad day, and it's the greatest fucking thing that ever happened to me. So even when I was a kid, I felt that way, and I feel that way now. But Monster Squad, I didn't like then, and I don't like now. It's just so overrated.
I think there's something to be, sort of said for as well, because like we can love old films, right? And you can easily tell that old films have aged. There's nothing wrong with old films aging, but
Right,
if they stand the test of time, then that doesn't really matter. You can look
right.
at it and be like, that's really not great special effects, or the script really ages it or whatever. But you know what? Like I can still go back and watch fucking Frankenstein and all those, Universal movies, for monster movies from the
Oh
20s and
God, yeah.
30s and all that years. They've aged, but they're fucking great. And I think a good movie will
Yeah, like
always
Bride of Frankenstein is a
yeah,
goddamn
a
masterpiece.
good movie will always stand the test of time. So, yeah.
I agree, 100%.
Okay, so that's your number four pick. My number four pick, I think this one's probably going to be at least less controversial with you, and I think it'll probably be a little bit less controversial widely amongst the community. But the reason I picked this one is because this one was just such a huge financial success. This one was huge. So my number four pick is Paranormal Activity. Now, I know that Paranormal Activity isn't widely beloved from the horror fandom, at least in 2024. However, the success
And your
level,
found footage, like subgenre people, yeah, they still love it.
yeah, but the success this movie garnered is absolutely unfathomable when you look at how little this movie was made for. And credit to them for making the movie on the tiny, tiny budget that they did. Full credit to them.
Minuscule.
Full credit to them. But the money that this movie made and the money this entire franchise has gone on to make is absolutely disgusting for the actual movies. I do think there's a couple of the sequels that are slightly better than Paranormal Activity, the first one. I think the couple of the sequels are a little bit better, but as a whole, this franchise is just fucking hot shit, you know?
But I
It,
do have a theory on it. I think, because the Blair Witch Project had this very viral, in the early days of the internet, way of getting people in there.
yeah.
And it's controversial because a lot of people are like, it's shit, it was shit then, it's shit now. It's one of those that would be top on a lot of people's paranormal.
I think Blair
Blair Witch
Witch would be
Project.
on Nico's list.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know how he feels about that film. Paranormal Activity, I don't mind. I saw it came out God,
2000,
my son was a
2007.
baby,
It
so
came out in 2007,
2007.
yeah.
Yeah, because my son was a baby. Um, I saw it simply because the trailer just showed audience
Yeah,
reactions.
yeah.
And I was like, well, I like scary movies. I want to see if this will fucking scare me. And and how it scares me is I have anxiety, like severe anxiety. So, it's the tension and the jump scares. And I just think it was the viral campaign that made it so huge.
Yeah.
And then people just kept coming back. I have no deep love for it, but I have no deep hate for it. I feel kind of
The
about
other
it.
thing for me is as well, when you think of Blair Witch Project, I really like Blair Witch Project as a film, and I know that's the unpopular opinion on this podcast, but I think that movie kind of backs up its marketing campaign somewhat, and that's probably a discussion for a different day because I think we could probably do an hour on that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Whereas I think in Paranormal Activity, I think it's the complete opposite. I don't really don't think, you think as well, and this might be a bit of a theme, but these characters like, is it Mika? Mika is probably one of the most hated characters
Oh my
in
God, Mika,
horror.
I just want to fucking body slam him. I mean, well, technically, I get that a little bit, but Mika is such a douchebag. I mean, I would have kicked his fucking ass. I actually would have just moved the fuck out. Like, fuck this guy.
um, But on the flip side, again, I will state, congratulations to them because I think it might still hold the record for the most sort of successful horror franchise there's ever been when you consider the amount of money their movies have made for it. Because each one of these movies made hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds. Like it's not like you're talking.
Yeah, and they were none of them had a huge budget.
I think was it
Except for four had a bigger budget, and that's why four is the worst one.
yeah. Because I think was it 15,000. I think this first movie was made for. It was something ridiculously small like that.
Yeah, I mean something very tiny,
You
something
know.
very close to that.
So
Absolutely.
and it did sort of help revive the found footage genre a little bit. But that's I think the found footage genre is always probably another that along with sort of remakes your most sort of controversial subgenre because it's so polarizing, isn't it? Like there are people out there who just will refuse to fuck with found footage movies. I'm not a big
Yeah,
found.
and then you got your people like because in on Reddit I follow a lot of horror subreddits, and there's a found footage one that I follow just because every once in a while I want to fuck with one
Mhm.
just for whatever shits and giggles. My daughter really likes them. But yeah, I mean it's just overall like I don't know. And I don't know that it's for me, but
And
I
this
can fuck with it
and this
on an occasion.
And listen, I think there is a few I think really good found footage movies out there, but they're so few and far between in what is just a genre that is flooded with absolute trash. So, for me, Paranormal Activity goes on that list as well. So that's my number 4 pick. So
That feels fair.
did that feel a bit more fair than X?
Yeah, absolutely did. I think we started out with some pretty controversial shit. My
Oh,
my top three are well known to that I think are overrated. So they're not gonna surprise anybody, but
I mean,
but
my top three are very, very well known horror films. I don't know if you know that I was going to pick any of these top. I think you might be able to figure out one that I was pick. I definitely know of at
mine
least.
are gonna be zero surprise to
Yeah, I
you,
was going to say
particularly.
I definitely know one, but I could probably guess the other two. So, in that being said, do you want to tell us what your number 3 pick is?
Sure. My number three pick, this one may be a little bit more of a mystery than my top two, but I picked House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah.
That had such a big, like, oh my God, House of a Thousand Corpses is one of the best films I've ever fucking seen. And oh my God, Rob Zombie's a fucking genius. And I've been a fan, I had been a fan of White Zombie starting in junior high into early high school. And then when Rob Zombie went solo, I liked his music. And then he makes House of a Thousand Corpses. And even my own husband and I argue about this. I think House of a Thousand Corpses doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. It's like well, you can tell it's inspired by fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre very clearly. But also it's very derivative of so many movies. And it also in the end doesn't know what the fuck it wants to be or what it's doing. I do not understand the love. What I do like about it is Sid Haig as Captain Spaulding. I
Oh,
will not fight about that because it's fantastic. That's the one thing I do like. Sid Haig deserved his fucking renaissance that he had before he died. Like when I would go to Horror Hound, which is the Midwest America, like Big Five horror con, Sid Haig always had the longest line, the
good.
very longest line, and he fucking deserved it. But otherwise, this movie doesn't know what the fuck it's doing, doesn't know what it wants to do. And the whole Dr. Satan thing, like, come on,
So,
come on.
so
That was stupid. And Dr. Satan was what you came up with. Like, do you have an original bone in your body? Like, that was the cheapest cop out bullshit. So it makes me angry because so many people are obsessed with it.
so I'm definitely higher on House of a Thousand Corpses than you are. However, I don't think there's any of your points there that I'm necessarily going to disagree with. What I will say for the movie is it spawned a significantly superior sequel in The Devil's Rejects.
Devil's Reject is, overall a fine movie. I don't I watched it once or twice. I'm good on that after all that.
I th-
I'm fine.
I think the difference
And
is
Three from Hell was a piece of shit.
Three from Hell was
Um,
terrible. For me, Three from Hell is the worst
it
of the
was
franchise.
really
I
bad.
think with Devil's Rejects, what they actually did was actually refine these characters. You know, Bill Moseley, I think does a good job in House of a Thousand Corpses, but he really refines what it is, like what his character of Otis is. I think Sig Haig gets to have like a lot more fun in Devil's
Yeah,
Rejects as
Tutti
well.
fucking fruity.
You know, Sherry Moon Zombie, like fair play to her. You know, she's gone on to make a career, but she's not the greatest performer in the world.
Here's the thing that I feel, and maybe this is a hot take from me. It probably is. Um, what I love about Rob Zombie and Sherry Moon Zombie is that he loves his wife so much. And listen, I'm in love with love. So he loves his wife so much that he puts her in every fucking movie.
Yeah.
And I want to be loved on that level. Like, you're not great at it, honey, but I fucking love you. And I think you're beautiful. And I think you deserve to be in this, in
And
every
listen,
fucking thing I do.
like she's not horrendous, and she's a very beautiful woman, you know. So like,
She laughs horrendously, though. You want to kind
um,
of punch her in the face
she
a little bit.
does she does do that sort of manic, crazy, maniac sort of performance that she does in a lot of the movies. Well, I think for me, my issue with Sherry Moon Zombie is when she tries to be a bit more serious, you know. So things like Lords of Salem, for
Like
example.
in the Rob Zombie Halloween.
Yeah, you know, like when she has to play this sort of slightly more serious role, that's when I sort of have more issues with her. I just don't think she's got that range
Yeah.
for as much. When she's playing this sort of
Yeah.
manic, crazy character, I think it's not as good again in Three from Hell, but that whole movie is just a hot pile of steam and
And as
shit.
a former actress, I gotta tell you, playing the crazy roles are a lot of fun.
Oh
Those
yeah,
are the roles that everybody wants.
and it's one
Because
thing.
a lot of people are like, well, I want to be the main character. And I'm like, no, I want to be the crazy bitch
Yeah,
because it's so fun to play.
and they're the ones that get
It's a fun thing.
remembered, you know. And like you say, Sid Haig, I
Yeah.
think is
And they're just
fantastic.
as an actor, you just get to flip into this character and it's a blast.
I
So,
think,
but I love that Rob Zombie loves his wife.
yeah, I
But
think the other issue,
overall, House of a Thousand Corpses is just a piece of
I
shit.
think,
It's like what he does in his music is pulled from a lot of exploitation, grindhouse movies, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a lot of movies that he loves. You know what they are, and then when you see the movie, you're like, oh, what works in his music does not work well in a film because it looks like it's trying to be every other film, and then his original parts to it. Dr. Satan, fuck you.
I think editing and cinematography is a bit of an issue for me with this movie as well, because this movie is just like an assault
Some
on.
people love that.
So it's just an assault on the senses, and I think that is something that he has refined as his career has gone on. You know, I don't think it ever really gets that. Don't get me wrong, there's still movies where it's like really wacky. I think 31 is probably a really good example of that. But you know, I think he's definitely refined that, and it is quite jarring as well. I think in that first movie.
Yeah, it's just way too much going on.
Yeah.
And that's my problem with it is it's so jumbled, it's all over the place. It doesn't really have the plot is so threadbare. Um I do not understand, like, people love this fucking movie and I've never, I don't know, every time I start talking about, there's always somebody going, oh, House of a Thousand Corpses is like the greatest. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, it is
Well, uh,
completely overrated. It's a
just
hot mess.
just to put you sort of into context, House of Thousand Corpses we have reviewed on the podcast before, and it isn't in a relatively high position as we speak. It's in 67th place right now. Me and Nico both gave it pretty decent scores. The critics gave it horrendous scores, but the audience were giving it high scores as well. So I think that's where you can see that,
That
maybe
seems
it's
right.
a little overrated in that sort of sense, because the critics fucking hated it, but the audience loved it. And that's maybe where
I was a critic
we
on
can
that
see.
one.
But yeah, House of a Thousand Corpses. Listen, I'll happily watch it from time to time, but I would much rather just go and jump straight to The Devil's Rejects. I think it's a far superior movie. And I think all the characters are better in that movie, and it's just better
And
in
I
the
don't
whole.
even love Devil's Rejects, but if I had to watch any of that trilogy, it would be Devil's
Yeah.
Rejects.
Oh,
And I
100%.
don't want to watch it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Okay, so we shall move on to my number 3 pick. Um, this one was. I was a bit unsure about whether I was going to put this one in or not. This is probably the one I was a bit most conflicted with. Um, it's The Conjuring. So
Right.
so I have some issues with The Conjuring. Personally, I think glorifying con artists who did more bad than good and being really loose with the whole based on a true story element, and seeing beloved horror actors like Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga playing these roles.
Patrick Wilson any day.
I think I don't think the Warrens were good people. Back when they were alive, I think they did a lot of damage.
They were hucksters. They were snake oil
Yeah.
salesmen. They were full of shit.
And I think my problem with this movie and the entire franchise, because I think that the Waniverse that this has sort of created, I really struggle to actually find a good movie in it. Like, I don't think there's a single movie. And we had a brief discussion about this and we disagreed with this, that I think the best movie in the franchise for me is The Conjuring 2. But having said that, that doesn't mean, again, I think that it's a good movie. I just think it's the best in the franchise. There's not really a movie in this franchise that you could say to me, pick something from this franchise and we'll watch it. I'd be like, fuck no, well, let's watch something from a different franchise. I think this it's
Let's put
everything
on Dead
is
Alive and have fun.
everything is everything is so predictable and paint by numbers in this movie. These movies really fucking hold your hand and walk you through it the entire way. And I'm not about that. I like a movie to like challenge you a little bit. I like it to surprise you, something
Make
a
you
bit
think.
shocking and make you think. And nothing in these movies do that, and it's so disheartening because, like you say, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, they're massive horror stars. They're beloved, and
And for me, always watching like indie films,
mhm,
I like Lily Taylor as
yeah,
the mother. Like, for her, I hadn't seen her in like a mainstream movie in
yeah.
probably 20 years. So I was really happy to see her because she's this kind of unconventional looking, so she didn't get a lot of like the heavy work, but she was an indie darling back in like
I
the
think the
90s.
I think the last sort of mainstream movie I saw her in was The Haunting, and we all know how that went.
Yeah, like the less said, the better on that. That's not even overrated because everybody fucking hates
Everyone
it.
fucking hates it. You know who doesn't
I don't
hate
know
it?
one person that likes it.
I'll tell you one person who likes it. My mother fucking loves that
What?
movie.
Like,
my
give me the 60s version with Julie Christie.
my
Fuck that.
mother used to watch that movie all the fucking time. I saw that movie so many times when I was like younger, because she fucking loved that film. And like but without going on too much of a tangent, the cast of that movie is insane. What an insane casting. A movie from Lily Taylor to Catherine Zeta-Jones to Owen Wilson to Liam Neeson, like it's so bizarre.
And then
Um,
they shit the bed.
yeah. Oh, they do big time, but
What a waste of talent.
it's a movie.
Like,
It's a
oh.
movie I'm ashamed to have say that I've probably seen about 20 to 30 times, but none of it was through choice.
Right, right.
So thank you very
Same.
much
My
for.
mom, my mom was really big on it. I was working at the video store when it came out, so I brought it home, and she was like, "Huh." I would never have grabbed it otherwise.
Yeah,
But so it was my mom as well, because
yeah,
I think it was sort of like, oh, I love the older one. It's like, let's just leave it at that.
yeah. But yeah, so I think the thing for me is with The Conjuring, like it's a franchise, and again, much like Paranormal Activity, it's gone on to be so successful and spawn all of these other movies from the Nun sub franchise to the Annabelle sub
Oh,
franchise,
the Nun movies. Jesus fucking
and then I
Christ.
think are we not
No
get
pun intended.
are we getting the Crooked Man sub series of movies as well, and like it's like what, and the devil made me do it was utterly ridiculous. I never want to see a scene like that when they've got Blondie playing over the top of it again. Like, what the fuck was going on there?
Yeah, I saw that in the theaters because I get free passes from time to time because my stepdaughter was working at a theater,
Yeah,
a movie theater. And I was like, I'm glad this was free, but I'll look at Patrick Wilson all fucking day
yeah.
though.
Well, that's what I used to do because I used to like obviously
And Vera Farmiga.
I used to have like a cinema pass, that like a monthly thing, and the gauge of whether or not I liked the movie enough would I have been happy to have paid for my ticket? you know. And if I would have been happy to pay for my ticket, then that's great. I've gone and seen a movie that I really liked, and it's a good movie. And then this though was definitely not. And unfortunately for me, I did pay to go and see, you know, these movies. So yeah, that's The Conjuring at number 3 for me. I think that's probably a bit more of a popular one, though. I think a lot of people are in the same boat. Again, the overrated a factor for me with this one comes from the success that this movie and the rest of the franchise has had.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's a good split that favors people, rating it what quite high. Otherwise, like, why would we have gotten so many? Why do people keep watching? I do think out of the Conjuring movies or the Wandaverse with that, I do think The Conjuring's the best film. Um,
And that's saying
I
a
had a
lot.
fun theater experience with it.
Yeah,
I didn't love it, but it was a fun theater
yeah.
movie. And then when I watched it at home, I was like, oh, this sucks.
So yeah, The Conjuring there at number 3 for me. So we're getting to the big boys now. This is where things probably will start becoming. I know my two are going to be controversial as fuck, but we'll get to my two in just a second. So
Mine
Candy,
are no secret whatsoever. My ire for them, it burns with 1,000 suns.
I think one of mine's you could probably guess. The other one you're definitely not going to know I've picked this, and I think it might piss you off a little. But anyways, Candy, what is
Oh.
your number 2 pick?
Now, number two and number one, again, a preface. I kept flipping them. Um, but I landed on for number two, The Shining.
Oh,
I hate Stanley Kubrick. I think he directed every movie with his head up his ass. He was a prick. And also, why would you butcher such a scary fucking book? The book of now, okay, now I get this shit a lot. Like people are like, oh, Candy and her books. I read a lot and I read very fast, not on purpose. I read so much that I reread a lot. I have a book sitting next to me that I've read probably 50 times because I read so fast. I can't even keep up with myself. But yeah, The Shining was one that I read as a kid. My mom's a big Stephen King fan, and the book was so fucking scary. I couldn't sleep at night. Like, and then my mom's like, "Oh, you got to see the movie because I saw it at the drive-in when you were a baby, blah 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 blah." Because it came out when I was like literally an infant. Um, the thing is, and I'm gonna have to quote Stephen King on this. This and in the book, and I know that you're not supposed to make the argument like, of course the book's better, but Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson in the film, he starts out as as this guy who's struggling but trying to do the right thing for his family. He's sober. He's not at a 10 already where Jack Nicholson starts in the
hmm.
film. Like there's no growth. It's just the only slight growth we get is he gets a little crazier. He starts out crazy. And I think for this Shining to work, we need to start, maybe at a 2 and work our way up to a 10 because that is the pacing. And there's a lot of scenes that for Stanley Kubrick to throw the fucking whole book over his shoulder, he does put in. Like people talk about, well, what was the scene with the guy and the guy dressed with the dog as a dog? Well, in the book, they explain that. But my mom said when she saw this at the drive-in, she was trying to explain that scene to somebody who hadn't read the book. And it was like, why did he put that in there? What the fuck was that about? And people absolutely love The Shining, the film, because they're like, oh, Jack Nicholson. It's like, but Jack Nicholson is crazy the whole fucking time in the movie. And I mean, there are a couple scenes that I really do like when Wendy's got the bat and he's like, I'm gonna bash your brains right the fuck in. Like it's just delivered well because Jack Nicholson is being Jack Nicholson in it. He's every movie he's the same character once he got to a certain point in his career. Like earlier on, he would do all these kind of different things in like Roger Corman films and Easy Rider and shit like that. But like once he reached The Shining, it was just every movie he's the same character. So that The Shining suffers for that. It was a lot of style over substance, and it disappoints me that so many people love it. And I'm always like, have you read the book? And most of the time, like 90% of the time, the people that love this movie have not read the book. And I'm like, if you've read the book, it would disappoint you. But also, I try to think of it from the perspective of people who haven't read the book. And it still like lacks, this greatness that it and the flowers and the lauding that people give it. Like it's just not great. It's just not great at all. The deaths are disappointing. Why did we kill Halloran? Because he doesn't die in the book. Spoiler. Um, like what was the point of all of that buildup? Like with Halloran and like he's oh well they need me and all this shit and he shows up and instantly dies. It's like what was the point of that? I just don't understand it. So, yeah, The Shining is a piece of shit, and I do not understand why people love it so much. I literally hate it, and I'm holding myself back right now, because I'm a little, loopy, so I'm not as angry as I normally would be. I mean, I'm still angry. I'm just not expressing it. I'm not like yelling or being like red faced, but I really hate it that much. And the fact that it is one of the most beloved horror films, it really fucking burns my ass. It is not good. And I really wish people would take those fucking goggles off and look at the movie and go, wait, what?
I knew you. I
So
obviously knew.
I know you like The Shining.
I knew you were gonna pick The Shining. That was like the one. I thought it was gonna be your number one.
Not a secret.
I thought that was gonna be your number one pick. I do like The
It
Shining.
was waffling. My number one and number two were almost interchangeable. So
I do like The Shining. However, The Shining is always sort of considered up there to be with that sort of top tier level horror movies, and we've talked about that before. The likes of your Alien, your likes of Jaws, likes of The Exorcist, and The Shining is
Exorcist.
The Shining is very, very often put into that sort of bracket. And whilst I do like The Shining, I don't think it's at that level. I think it's a level below. I have read the book. I'll just sort of preface that by saying that. The thing is for me, right, and this is maybe slightly controversial as well, I'm not always the biggest fan of Stephen King's writing. I'm a fan of Stephen King's stories and the characters that he creates, but sometimes I find a lot of what he does to be sort of overcomplicated and confusing, and that's probably got a lot to do with a lot of his sort of we all know what Stephen King was like in his earlier days, cocaine fueled, binges and all of that sort of thing, so
He doesn't even remember writing Cujo.
yeah, exactly. And
And that's a great fucking book.
and we've all seen, Maximum Overdrive, so we all know what that shit was doing to them at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, we have.
Listen, I think you're right. Jack Nicholson became the Joker when he acted in The Shining, right? This is when it was like he was the Joker before he
Yes.
was the Joker. And he is an expert at playing that sort of crazy role. And then I think when you delve into everything that went on behind the scenes of this movie, and it is very well documented about the
Yeah, it's
appalling
dark.
the appalling treatment that Shelley Duvall had in this movie. It's very well
That poor
documented.
woman.
Fuck Stanley Kubrick, he's a piece of fucking shit. That's definitely, got to be said, right up front as well.
There's a couple of great directors. I mean, I don't think Stanley Kubrick's great, but like Alfred Hitchcock, who I do think is a great director, piece of shit human being.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
sometimes you can separate the art from the artist and sometimes you can't.
Yeah, but I think it is always worth bringing up as well. Like Shelley Duvall was treated just absolutely horrendously during the filming of this movie, and it's
Yeah,
something that
poor
I think
woman.
whenever we do sort of analyze and review it, we have to talk about it a little bit. So just to sort of throw that in there as well, and I just again sort of along the lines of what you were saying, I just don't think this is a flawless movie. I think there's some great scenes in this movie, and there's some absolutely iconic moments in horror. Him, banging down the door with the axe is one of the biggest, most recognizable and memorable moments in horror. Here's Johnny, everyone knows what that's from. You know, the scene with the baseball bat, like you're saying, I think is a great scene. You know, the chase through the snowy hedge maze. I love that scene so much. So that, like, there are so many aspects of it I do love, but there are certain things that just don't quite fit. Like you say, you know, the scene with the dog and the man dressed up as the dog, and it's like, yeah, you're right. I kind of wish there was that sort of explanation. And whilst I'm not gonna
I'm
go,
like, why even include that? It
I'm
added nothing.
I think the whole scene in the sort of gold room, I think I really love that scene as well. But and I'm not gonna get too much into the discussion of Doctor Sleep because we all kind of know my feelings about Doctor Sleep. Um,
I love Doctor Sleep.
I appreciated that movie for the fact that it had to sort of balance between the two, because if it had just gone and paid complete lip service to what Stephen King would have wanted, then it would have alienated its entire audience, and vice versa, you know, like
Well, I
it,
know one thing that Nico and I always agree on is that we fucking love Mike Flanagan.
yeah.
I mean, it's just fantastic.
Um
I think it righted the wrongs of The Shining, and for that, I love it a million times more.
so again, like I say, I'm not going to go too much to Doctor Sleep because I think Doctor Sleep has its own sort of issues and flaws and whatever else. But I think I still love The Shining. I think The Shining's great. I would probably agree with you that maybe it is slightly overrated because it is sort of considered to be one of those sort of all-time great horror movies, and I think it's maybe for me. I know it's a
Like
much.
like a top 10 list, it would
Yeah,
always be in there.
you know, currently, The Shining sits now. I just saw it. It sits in 18th place on our leaderboard right now, which
Ooh.
is high. But I think, you know, that's where I'm sort of saying, you know, it's not that sort of top 6, 7, 8 movies, you know, where we've got things like Jaws and Alien and Halloween and The Exorcist and Misery and The Thing. These are the absolute pinnacles of horror. For me, The Shining's always just been that little
Correct.
level below. So while you think it's low, I'd still think I agree with you that it's more loved than I think it probably should be. It gets more props than it should, but I still think it's a really great film.
Mm.
That's about as compromising as I think I could have
A
been.
nasty taste in my mouth over that one.
Right.
And I was nice about it. I was nice about The Shining today, folks.
Yeah,
If you're unfamiliar
I've
with my
heard you.
past work, I was very nice.
I've heard you like fully go off on The Shining, so I'm aware of the restraint you just managed to have. But let's move on, shall we?
Proud of myself.
To my number 2 pick, and this is the one I think you're gonna maybe hate me a little bit for. So there's one franchise out there that is universally considered to be the only franchise that doesn't have a bad movie in it.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I know where you're going. I know where you're going with this.
And I agree with that sentiment. I don't think this franchise has a bad movie in it. However, for me, there is one movie in this franchise that I think is by far the poorest movie in this franchise, and it is so beloved amongst the community that, and I just think it's just okay. So I'm gonna put Army of Darkness on my most overrated list.
You know, I will say this for you. I think it's the weakest entry
I think for me, right, it is.
in a great franchise. I think it's still good, but it is not my favorite of the franchise. It is my least favorite. So when Bruce Campbell was here last year and we got to do the VIP seating, he was showing a different movie in every city as he toured America. And in my city, he showed Army of Darkness. I was like, motherfucker, why couldn't it have been Evil Dead
Yeah.
or Evil Dead 2? Why did I get Army of Darkness? But it was still kind of cool to watch it with Bruce. But still, like, yeah, I do think it's the weakest entry, like in the franchise as a whole.
Yeah. Listen, again, I'm going to preface this by saying I agree with everyone who says there's not a bad movie in this franchise, because there isn't. Army of Darkness is not a bad movie. However, it's not a great movie. Like, because I think Evil Dead, and we talked about Evil Dead 2 when we were talking about horror comedies in our Shaun of the Dead episode, you know, these are the sort of movies that sort of they really strike that balance, right? They get that balance so right between comedy and horror. And Army of Darkness just goes off the fucking deep end and it's so bizarre and comedic and slapstick that it just takes away all of the horror elements for me. And
Yeah, it doesn't feel, it's not, I technically think it's a horror movie, but it's much more comedy, much more, you know, almost a period piece.
yeah,
It's more of like, um, I don't know. It's not scary or gory. It's very much a toned down,
it takes away everything what
PG
made for
13-ish.
me it takes away everything what made the first two Evil Dead movies great, because even though they are specifically Evil
I will
Dead,
agree with that.
specifically everything with Evil Dead 2, it's
Yes.
not as funny, it's not as hard hitting. Some of those scenes in those first two movies are so hard hitting, and they're so
It
there's
lacks gore, and gore is was heavily in one and two,
yeah. And
even
then
though
when
two had a lot of comedy.
Yeah, and then when you go and obviously we've got the sort of modern Evil Dead from 2013 and Evil Dead Rise, and they've lent the
Oh,
opposite.
2013 is fantastic.
2013 is incredible. They've lent completely in the opposite direction though, and went complete horror, but they've also gone back to that sort of Evil Dead roots where it's gory as fuck. I think Evil Dead, I'm not sure if it still does, but I think it held the record for the most fake blood used in a horror movie of all time. Um, and
Yes.
it's so fucking metal,
Like
and
Ruth
it's
Campbell would come home from filming, and from the all the blood and all the different things that they would put on him in the first two films, his shirt would break
yeah.
because it was so sticky.
Hmm.
His shirt actually broke on several occasions. I'm like, that's pretty badass.
And then
And we got early K and B to thanks for the second film.
and then you've got like and I know, I think Nico said it as well. I think Army of Darkness is his favorite movie in the whole franchise, and it baffles me that people can have like people can have that. People are entitled to their opinions, but this is one of the ones that
Sean
just
and my
baffles.
son Ash, who I will point out, his name is Ash on purpose for Evil Dead. That is both their favorite films in the franchise. And I'm like, I'm so disappointed in you. Like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. So I'm agreeing with you on this one.
So yeah, um, I can't. I think because of that and because of the wide love that is just held amongst the horror sort of fandom and the horror community, I I had to put it on my list because it is like I say, I think it is so like I think Evil Dead Rise is a good film. I don't think it's as good as Evil Dead. I think
It would be like my second least favorite
I
after
think
Army of
for me,
Darkness.
and everyone knows I have the controversial statement of saying that 2013 is my favorite Evil Dead movie, but Evil Dead 2 is really fucking close behind it. And then for me, the original and Evil Dead Rise kind of alternate. I think it more depends. I think it depends for me on what I'm looking for on a specific day. So if I'm looking for something that's a little bit more comedic, I would rather watch the original. If I'm looking for something that's more serious and a bit like more of that sort of modern style, then I'll go for Evil Dead Rise. I
I
know.
love 2013, but I love Evil Dead. Evil Dead changed my DNA. The first one did. And I love 2013. Like, do not get me wrong. I'm obsessed with it. I watch it a lot. I watch it almost as much as I watch the original, but I have to like disagree with you on
That's
that.
that's that's absolutely fine. But what we can agree on is that Army of Darkness is easily the weakest of the franchise. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad film.
Yeah.
It's
But
not a
you
bad.
know what? If we were doing like a top 10, it would have been in my top 10.
Yeah,
Army of Darkness.
fair. That's fair. So I will accept that. I thought I was maybe going to piss you off a little bit more with this one than I ended up doing. So
No,
I'm
Army of Darkness is my least favorite,
okay.
but I
That's
do
fine.
love it.
That's fine. Um, in that case, then we've reached that time of the episode where we're going to talk about our number ones. And this is where things get super interesting. So, Candy, can you to reveal to everyone what your number one most overrated horror movie is, please?
Well, Evelyn, folks. Freddy versus Jason. That movie, everyone was so fucking excited about it. And I was excited about it because, in the 80s, there was this whole like, as a kid growing up in the 80s, one thing you missed out on is in the 80s, like horror was peddled to children and it wasn't toned down at all. It was like, hey kids, you like Jason? He kills everyone. It's great. Or you like Freddy? He kills children in their sleep. It was peddled to us as children and kind of like a good schoolyard, recess topic if you were a horror fan. And unfortunately, I didn't know any female horror fans back then. It was just me and guys talking about it. Who would win, Freddy versus Jason? And I'm like, Freddy. I mean, like, I'm a Freddy fucking girl. I do love Jason now. Jason's been a new addition in the last 5 years. And through doing podcasts, I've learned to appreciate them in their own way. So I was really excited. This was like the ultimate showdown. Like we were ready for this. And particularly my generation was ready to see this film. And one of my closest friends, Adam, and I went to go see this, and we left and we were livid. We were furious. Like that was the biggest piece of shit movie. Like, okay, so the thing is like the original idea was Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, which would have been fantastic, but they couldn't. There was a lot of rights issues, and it was a fucking. I guess some people would call it a miracle that they made the film at all. But it's like, so we're doing Freddy versus Jason. We've got humans, right? But we're not going to root for them. We got to have one of the bad guys be not so bad. And if you're going to pick one of those, why Jason? Jason has a higher body count. Jason doesn't make any sense, honestly. He has no personality. At least Freddy has his quips, and some people love or hate those. I fucking love them. Like he's entertaining to me. He plays with his food like a cat. So you're gonna tell me that Jason's the better of the bad guys and they kind of make him sympathetic? I wasn't buying that bullshit. And he was only killing because Freddy was like marionetting him and playing with him and blah 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 and using his mom against him. Fuck that. Fuck this fucking movie. I hate it. I never want to watch it. And I actually have the cool DVD set from like early on, pre Blu-ray. That's I probably should have brought that out for my show and tell. The one that stops with New Nightmare. But then I have a newer Freddy set that goes all the way to Freddy versus Jason. Now there are Jason sets out there. There's a great one by Shout Factory that's a really amazing, very expensive. But Freddy versus Jason isn't in it. I feel like this is much more of a Jason film, particularly the way they portrayed him. But they always put it in the Freddy sets, and that makes me angry all over again. I just want to like destroy them with my bare hands. I just want to take my teeth and like rip them apart. Like I want to rip this movie apart. And people are like, well, it was really cool seeing Kelly Rowland get killed. I'm like, that's your selling point? Fuck you. I like, how could you take such a great premise? It's evil versus evil. And then they're gonna be like, well, one's not as evil. I'm like, no, can we like root for the humans like we do in Freddy movies? No, this is a Jason movie. I'll die on that fucking hill. And to this day, people love it. Love it. It had its 20th anniversary not too long ago, maybe last year, I think, or the year before. I don't pay attention because I hate to give this movie any thought. But yeah, Freddy versus fucking Jason is the most overrated fucking horror film of all time. And people are just like, but it's so cool that they no fuck it. It's not cool. I really wish they hadn't done it. And anybody who likes it, I don't know. I'm not gonna say mean things. Just use your brains, people. Like this movie isn't good. The kills aren't good, the gore's not good, everything sucks.
So
Fuck that movie.
I never ever thought we would have a Freddy versus Jason discussion on this podcast because I vowed to you that I would never ever choose it because I am fully aware of your hatred for it. And I'm fully aware
Given the topic, there was no way I could avoid this film.
So So this is it. This is going to be me getting my 2 cents out of my system because this will probably be the last time
Yeah, because then we'll never speak of
we'll
it
never
again.
speak of it
And my
again.
blood pressure goes up.
We're not going to cover this movie because of how
Thank
much
God.
this upsets you. I'm going to preface what I'm about to say so I don't upset you too much. This movie is fucking terrible, right? This movie is horrible. This movie is awful. And I fuck with it so fucking hard.
No. No. Man, oh my God, I'm so disappointed.
Well, I mean, listen, I have previously
It's not even fun.
I've previously stated. No, but so this movie comes into the category for me of so bad it's good.
But it's so bad it's bad.
But
so bad it's good is Dead Alive. So bad it's good
Okay.
is Sleepaway Camp 2. You know what I'm saying?
That,
Like,
no. For me, like, it's so bad that I find myself laughing at it constantly throughout the movie, and
even the little pinball scene.
Even yes, because it's so fucking shit. It's so shit.
It really is shit.
Listen, this movie is horrendous. This movie is terrible. This is not the movie that everyone wanted. It's such a fucking shame that this is the last time we got Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. Like, I'm just gonna put
I agree with that.
But
why do people love this movie? Why? Why is it so loved?
But the same way that people will continue to rewatch Jason X, the same way people will continue to watch.
I'd rather watch Jason X.
That's fine. Jason X, and I'm with you on that because Jason X is my favorite Friday the 13th movie. It's my favorite Jason movie. But it's the same reason.
Mine is
Jason Takes Manhattan.
Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah.
And also part 5.
Yeah.
Which is the 2 most hated in the series. I fucking love them. The Scooby-Doo.
But you know, people will also continue to watch things like fucking Halloween Resurrection because they want to see.
Oh God, no.
They want to because it's like a car crash. It's like a car crash. You're driving past. You can't take your eyes off it. You can't take your eyes away. And every single time that I revisit, I think to myself, it can't be as bad as I've made it out to be, and it is. And there's some weird sadistic.
And sometimes it's worse.
There's some weird sadistic part of my brain that kind of likes it. That kind of likes that, you know.
It's kind of how I feel about Pieces. It's so bad.
yeah.
That I just can't look away from it. But I actually think Pieces is a better movie.
No. And listen.
Oh yeah.
There are some really problematic moments in this movie as well. There's some dropping of some slurs, which are absolutely not fucking cool. There's some lines in this movie that have no place in 2024.
Yeah, how sweet insert there instead of how sweet fresh meat.
Yeah,
we get some really
and there's some dropping of some homophobic slurs in there as well, and you know,
absolutely, because it was huge in the early 2000s to still say those kind of things.
Yeah,
like from the 80s on.
And they have absolutely no place in 2024. They had no place back then. They shouldn't have had any place back then.
In the early 2000s, fuck no.
So
bad enough in the 80s.
So it's very, very, again, you know, much like other things, it's something that I have to bring up. You know, whenever we talk about this movie, this will be the only time we talk about this movie. Even if Nico picks this movie, we shall not be reviewing it because he will probably try and pick it at some point to be funny, and it will be rejected.
I'm gonna call in sick. I just can't. I will go fucking ballistic.
We will not be covering this movie at any point on the podcast. So it is.
Thank you for that.
But yeah, I think for me, it's not a good movie. I agree with your sentiments, but like I say, there's something. This is one of those like unexplainable.
You agree that it's overrated though?
Well, yeah, because because it's terrible. Like it shouldn't have the. I will watch this movie. I fuck with this movie, but I'm laughing at it. I'm not laughing with it. If that
there's not really much to laugh with.
You know, that's that. If that makes sense, you know, I'm not enjoying the movie. I'm enjoying myself watching the movie. I don't really know.
It's sort of like my favorite show, Mystery Science Theater, and also by proxy, Riff Tracks. They watch terrible movies on purpose and make fun of them.
Yeah.
This is one that I feel so personal about. because I love Freddy as a villain, and I don't like what they did with this movie, so therefore I can't even make fun of it. I
Yeah.
can't. It's just it's almost holy to me.
Fair.
Freddy,
Absolutely
Freddy
fair.
mythology.
Right, I'm gonna spare you from talking about this movie anymore. And
Thank
that's
you.
it. And that's it. We'll never have a discussion about this movie ever again on the podcast. So if you're listening to this, listeners, and you love that movie, or if you want to hear us talk about it, just go and replay that last 10 minutes, because that's what you're getting.
There you go. Yeah, that's because that's all we need to say about that.
Um,
You don't want to see me angry.
but well, we'll see. So here comes my number one pick, and this is a movie and a franchise that I am notoriously not a big fan of. And this is a movie that I think has benefited from the fact that it came out during a really, 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 really shit period in horror. My number one most overrated horror movie of all time is Scream.
Yeah. I am no lover of Scream. The only thing Scream has going for it, well, it has two things going for it: Matthew Lillard and Rose McGowan.
So, I will preface this again, right, by saying I certainly do not think that Scream is a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination, and Scream absolutely revitalized horror at a time where we were like really fucking struggling to get any sort of good horror movies out there.
Yeah, the 90s were a dry spell.
When you think about the 90s and you think about great horror movies that came in the 90s, you will struggle to fill more than two hands. I can think of Scream, Misery,
Candyman.
Candyman, Event Horizon, Silence of the Lambs, and from
I'm
there,
gonna throw in the Mouth of Madness in
Mouth of
there. I
Madness,
think
yeah.
that's a
But from that
fantastic
point
film.
on, I'm struggling to think of like really great horror movies. There's definitely some out there that'll be like good and they were okay and whatever else, but to think of like really great horror movies, like I'd be struggling to come up with more than that.
Yeah, I'm kind of scratching my head. I really can't think of another one.
But so things that Scream have going for it, right? I think the opening screen scene to Scream is fucking great, and I think what they did with the
Yes.
marketing around that, in terms of like putting Drew Barrymore front and fucking center of their marketing campaign and making it out like the movie was going to be completely all around her, and then knocking her off within the first fucking 10 minutes of this movie was an absolute stroke of genius. What a great move that was.
Wes Craven, it was really his comeback.
Mm-hmm.
And Wes Craven's, one of the big horsemen of horror. And unfortunately, like I said, the only one of those we have left is John Carpenter. But
Who
Wes
must be
Craven,
protected at all costs.
yes, he must. He's such a grumpy old man. I think he's got a while in him. But
Yeah.
Wes Craven was really struggling like to find success again after Nightmare on Elm Street. Like he was struggling. He made some really bad movies,
Mm-hmm.
and Scream was sort of his comeback, and I'm happy for that.
Yeah, 100%. I will
But
agree with that 100%.
but I'm with you.
So, like, yeah, so we have this really fucking great opening scene, and I agree with you as well. The other good things for me about this movie are Matthew fucking Lillard and Rose McGowan. Those two are fucking great in this movie.
Mhm.
Matthew Lillard particularly, he chews that fucking scenery so hard.
My
He
mom and dad are gonna be so
like
mad at me.
he's so great in this. The entire rest of this movie is just a bog standard slasher movie with nothing really to shout home about. I've never been a huge Nev Campbell fan. I don't think she gives particularly good performances in Scream movies.
I feel like she's very wooden in her all of her acting. Every role I've ever seen her in, she's very wooden. And people are like, "Oh, she's the best final girl of all time." I'm like, "Well, let me
She
disagree with
doesn't.
you there."
She wouldn't even make my top five. Should we go and do a top five Final Girls movie? Nev Campbell,
It's on my
Sydney.
list of top five things I was so like ideas I had was Final Girls, but yeah, she wouldn't make it.
Yeah, like she would not make it for me. Courtney Cox is good in it. I like David Arquette. Like they're fine. I think Courtney Cox gets better throughout the franchise, even though the movies get worse.
Yeah, they do.
And listen, 5 and 6, I don't hate those movies. I went to the theaters to see
I didn't
them.
even see six.
I think again, Courtney Cox kind of continues this sort of trend. I think she's pretty good in these two films. And I think David Arquette coming back was good, but I'm not a huge fan of like the new sort of core group. I think Jenna Ortega's really good in it, and Melissa Barrera's really good in it. And then you've got the rest of this core group, and I don't really fuck with them that much. So, yeah, like I have mixed feelings about those ones, and they got like they got a lot of love. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy surrounding, Scream 7 and whether or not that's actually ever going to happen now.
Well, actually, it is. It's been recently announced because Jenna Ortega's not coming back.
Yeah,
Melissa Barrera was fired
yeah,
due to her political views on something that I'm not going to get into all
yeah,
that. Um, no place for that right now. So they're bringing back Nev Campbell.
yeah. But they have to though, because they need that hook because again,
Otherwise, they got
they've
nothing.
got not yeah, exactly. They've got absolutely nothing. And
And
again,
Skeet Ulrich's little appearances, I'm like, nobody ever like what the fuck else did he do
yeah, and
with his
in
career?
in Scream 6, like they brought Kirby back, and but they spent so long, and they've done it for every Scream movie, spending so much time teasing that Matthew Lillard's gonna come back, Stu Macher's back. Matthew Lillard's fucking dead. We watched him head get caved in with a fucking TV.
Yeah, and I mean they almost got me with that. I mean, I only watched Scream 5 because I was covering it for my old show and there was that like rumor about Stu.
Yeah,
And so we get fucking Billy.
yeah.
I'm like, no, no, and no.
Yeah, and then in Scream 6, it was again the same. Legacy characters are coming back. And they brought back Kirby. And I think there had been a general sort of sense that Kirby should be brought back. So I think that was
Yeah.
possibly like
And they killed off Marley Shelton's character in
yeah.
fucking 5. I was like, you don't do that to Marley Shelton. I fucking love her.
So I think for me, the whole Scream franchise is just like a complete series of like missteps. Like again will go out and say I fully appreciate how it's sort of saved horror in the mid 90s, and it was Wes Craven's comeback, and it put him back on the map because Wes Craven's a fucking great director.
Yes.
You've got Elm Street in there. Um, for me, he is
Last House on the
Last
Left.
House on the He's possibly got one of the most underrated horror movies for me, and People Under the Stairs.
People love People Under the Stairs. I don't, but people do.
I fucking love that movie so much. I might actually go and watch it. Like now that I've mentioned it, I may go and watch it when we
It's
finish
one of
this.
Sean's, so when I watch it, it's because he wants to watch it. And I'm like, all right, but we're watching Society after this shit.
Oh, that sounds like a fucking fantastic double bill to me. But yeah, it's no surprise that Scream's not my favorite. I've made no secret about that as well. But I just don't think it deserves its place as being like this fucking great horror movie. It is so often considered, and Ghostface as well as a villain that's obviously portrayed by multiple people over the course
That's
of the
the thing
franchise.
is like it's not supernatural. It's a different person, usually two at a time. And it's just like it's so predictable.
And
You can almost nail immediately who
yeah,
the duo's
and
gonna be.
every time they try to come up with like a new twist, and their whole sort of thing about being meta, and that grows old so fucking
Yeah,
quickly.
because there's so meta now that it's like, okay, you're just extremely unoriginal. Like we need to like calm down or maybe just let's retire. Like we're good,
Yeah.
right?
I thought, like, I know obviously we're saying the Scream 7 is going to happen. Personally, I think it's a franchise that just needs to be left alone now. This is like,
It needed to be left alone after
I
3.
am more than happy for fans of franchises to continue getting their content. Like, we will at some point get another Nightmare movie. We will at some point get another Friday movie. We will at some point get more Halloween content. Chucky is still chundering on. We got more, Evil Dead content with the new movies that have come out, and Ash versus the Evil Dead, which I forgot to bring up because I fucking love Ash versus the Evil Dead. You know,
I fucking love that show. Oh my God.
and all of these franchises are getting their sort of renaissance right now, and some of it's doing better than others. Chucky, I think, Child's Play the series, I think has gone down
It's on fire.
it's
It's
gone
doing
down a treat with
fantastic.
yeah, it's gone down a treat with the fans. Nightmare on Elm Street remake did not. Friday the 13th remake didn't. I think was okay. I think it was all right. It wasn't great. It wasn't horrendous. It was fine. I will watch it. That's
It was very unoriginal. I feel like if you're going to bring back a series, maybe do something with it. It just
Yeah.
felt like they were like, this is what they do in Friday the 13th movies. It felt very lazy.
Um, the new Scream movies for me are along the similar lines. I think they are been given this huge amount of love, and I think they're just they're fine. And it's what I think about for all of the franchise. I don't hate that. I don't really hate any of the movies, even number three, which really sort of starts to jump the
Yeah.
shark a little bit. But I don't love any of them, and I don't think any of them are particularly good. So
And
for
that's how I feel about it too, is like I don't really even think about it.
yeah,
No, now, like when we're talking about Matthew Lillard, I'm like, he was great in that. And that's about the most mentioned, or Rose McGowan, I'll mention that. But like otherwise, it really doesn't exist inside my lexicon. I don't own any of the films. I don't care to watch them. They don't really they
yeah.
don't exist in my little horror world. They're like, they're there.
So yeah, I think before I start to sort of talk myself round in circles, well, I shall leave it there. But that is our top five most overrated horror movies. So just a reminder for everyone, Candy, do you want to just run through your top five again for us?
Sure. My number five was Halloween 2018. My number four was The Monster Squad. Number three was House of a Thousand Corpses. Number two was The Shining. And number one was Freddy versus Jason.
Awesome. And my top five most overrated horror movies. At number five, I had X. At number four, I had Paranormal Activity. At number three was The Conjuring. At number two was Army of Darkness. And at number one was Scream. There is definitely some picks here from the both of us that's gonna upset some of
Oh
our
yeah,
listeners.
I can already like feel it
I think
coming.
I think for me, I think X and Army of Darkness and Scream are three for me that's gonna really upset people. I think for you, The Shining is really that's
Oh yeah.
really gonna ruffle some
And Freddy
feathers.
versus Jason gets people
Yeah.
really riled up against me.
So yeah.
Halloween 2018 is going to be the surprise one that everybody's going to be like, what the fuck?
So if you're listening to this episode just after we've released it, over the course of the next week or so, we will slowly reveal to everyone what our top five was on across our social media platforms. And we'll announce. We said those again at the beginning. We'll tell you all of those platforms again at the end of the show. Should we do honorable mentions? These are ones that we both have we have considered putting on our list, but maybe we felt they either didn't really deserve that much to talk about, or they weren't just quite made the top five. And we'll just we'll sort of fire through these a little bit. I'm gonna go first with this one. My first honorable mention goes to the US remake of The Ring. I think that is a wildly
Yeah.
over.
Ugh.
I think that's a wildly overrated horror movie.
Just watch the Japanese one.
I think though, I think now in 2024, I think Ringu gets a lot more love than perhaps it used to do when The Ring came out. So that's probably the reason why it's maybe just not made it into my top five. But The Ring
Because they're
definitely.
finally starting to appreciate, Asian horror
Yeah,
more, I
so
think.
I think, but The Ring for me, we've talked about this before about sort of J horror and American remakes of J horror, and like The Ring and The Grudge. And I think we both agreed that The Grudge was probably the
One
best
missed call.
one missed
Ugh.
call. I think we both agreed that The Grudge was a slightly better movie out of those two, because they at least tried to sort of keep it in that Japanese setting
And
and
we
thing,
had the same
and the
director
same
of the
director. So
original
that
Ju-on.
we gave that one a bit more kudos, even though it's not as good a movie as Ju-on.
But it does have my girlfriend Sarah Michelle
Yeah,
Gellar in it, and I'll just stare at her all
it
day.
has things going for it. I will say that
Yeah.
it has things going for it. The Ring for me doesn't have a huge amount going for it. It's just like it's yeah, no, it's not a thing for me. So yeah, The Ring. Honorable mention.
Barbarian. I was
Ooh.
it had so much buzz. I saw it at the drive-in and there was already so much buzz about it, in horror publications and just people talking. On I kind of say on horror Twitter or horror X, I guess, and same with Instagram, people were just going nuts over this movie. And I saw it and it pissed me off because it was stupid. It was not great. I did not see any appeal in it whatsoever.
I'm gonna just preface the rest of this chat by saying that Barbarian is one of the ones that I've not actually gotten round to watching yet.
You know, take it with a grain of salt. What I said, you may like it. I did not. I thought it was kind of stupid.
I think for me, it's like I saw the trailers for it and I was like, okay, like that looks interesting, but it wasn't like interesting enough for me to be like, I need to go to the cinema to see it. Like, I need to go to the theater to see this. So I kind of put it off and put it off and put it off. And I was going to watch like other things. And so I just never really got round to watching it, and I still haven't. And I see it on like subscription services just now, and I will get round to it eventually. I saw that it got like a lot of love during our awards for that year.
I was very disappointed by that because I was
Yeah.
voting against it the whole time. I was like, no, no.
So so yeah, like that's fair. I've not
I
got
think in 10 years, nobody will talk about that movie at all.
no.
It'll be gone.
So up next for me, I'm gonna throw The Purge in there as an overrated horror movie because I think up until maybe like the last two, The Purge was a franchise that actually I thought got better as each movie came out. I thought like the second and third Purges were actually kind of cool and kind of interesting and introduced like some cool like ideas and concepts, you know, when people were going out into the city. And I just think this first movie is so dull and so boring. And it's annoying because we've got Ethan Hawke in here, who I think is really fucking good. You know, he's got a couple of really great horror movies in his sort of filmography now, especially after The Black Phone. I think, you know, Sinister is a movie that's definitely worth
Sinister is good,
you know,
yes.
it's a movie that's worth talking about. Here, it just feels very paint by numbers. It feels we've got like a really interesting concept here. You know, it's a unique concept, and I think they just underperform with it. But the movie, and it's obviously is well loved, and it spawned this great franchise, which I do genuinely feel is a great franchise. Like I say, up until, you know, specifically at least the last one that came out, I think that was not a great movie. So yeah, The Purge for me is definitely an honorable mention.
Absolutely.
Okay, next for you.
This will come as no surprise, but The Lost Boys.
There it is. I really thought that was going to be in your top five.
No, I don't think it's top five material. I just think like I it has its moments that are okay, but the vampire I'm big on vampires. After zombies, it's vampires for me. As far as genre, like subgenre or whatever. But like the Lost Boys, the vampire mythology is like weak,
Mm.
and it's just I hate the Frog Brothers. I just don't have any affinity for this film. I do not know why people like it so much. It's dumb. It's just kind of dumb. Like I'm always like, just watch Near Dark
Yeah,
and you're
I
good,
think
you know.
for me, like I like The Lost Boys. I think it's a good film. I'll have fun watching it. I will revisit it. I don't Nico level of like it because Nico fucking loves The Lost Boys. It's his favorite
Yeah, I
movie
think I
of
really fucked him up when I
it's
rated
it's
it.
his favorite movie of all time. I prefer Near
Fools.
Dark over The Lost Boys.
That's
I'll
right.
always watch. I would always prefer to watch Near Dark over The Lost Boys. But you know, I'll still fuck with The Lost Boys. I think it's a fun movie, but
I
I
saw it
think
on the big screen a couple of years ago. It's
I
fine. I
think
mean,
I
I
think
just don't get the
I
buzz.
think if you swap the love between Near Dark, because Near Dark doesn't get anywhere near the love that it deserves, and Lost Boys
No, it
gets it all,
doesn't.
because they obviously came out in the same year as well. I think if you swap the love for them, then it would be fine.
Yeah.
Cool. So I have got just a couple more, and I'm just gonna quick fire name them, and then we'll let you quick fire name a few more, and then we'll get to listener mentions. So I've put the original Friday the 13th on my list of honorable mentions as well. I don't think that's a particularly good movie at all. It's got like a nice little twist at the end, which is great. Um, but I think that's like a vastly overrated horror movie. I also have The Babadook on my list. I don't fuck with that movie whatsoever.
I
It,
love it. Oh my God.
um, I think it's fine. There's just so many scratches, it just doesn't itch for me. And finally on my list, I don't hate this movie as well. I'm gonna put Insidious on my list too. because again, I think there are other movies in that particular franchise that are better, and I think it's another sort of slightly mild paint by numbers job as well. But I'm gonna
But Patrick
but
Wilson.
Patrick Wilson's fucking great in it as always. Lynn Shay's great in it. And I think
Yeah, she's fantastic.
this is where sort of Lee Winnell really starts to spread his sort of acting wings. Obviously, we'd seen him before in Saw, where
And he was great in Saw.
he was great in Saw, but we hadn't seen like a huge amount of him since, and he'd always sort of been writing for like James Wan and things, and we really started to see him sort of branch out and try and start to do things as well. So, kudos to them for that. But I think the movie as a whole is considered to be better than it is. So that's it. That's it for me. That's my honorable mentions. I tried to keep my honorable mentions relatively short, but Candy, do you want to just fire us through some more of yours?
Yeah, I've got a couple extra more than you do, but mine would be the original Suspiria.
Mm-hmm.
I love giallo films. I love Italian horror, but that is just what the fuck. Cool visuals, terrible movie. I know what you did last summer. People
Okay.
love that movie. It's trash.
You know
House
what?
of Wax.
Sorry.
What?
I think I know what you did last summer is a poor man's Scream, right? And Scream's
It
I
is.
don't think Scream's particularly good.
And even in the first one, it had my double trouble with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I'm, you know, it just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
House of Wax remake. We already talked about that on a previous episode a little bit. Wrong Turn. You know how I feel about Wrong Turn.
Wrong Turn. I considered bringing Wrong Turn up, but I just thought like, no, it wasn't quite enough for me.
Yeah. And then my other one was Scream.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised. I genuinely didn't think. Like, I know obviously that Scream wasn't like your biggest franchise, but I didn't think you would have it like anywhere near like this whole sort of conversation. So
oh yeah, Scream was on there.
And,
so
and
that's my honorable mention.
The ironic thing about this whole conversation is me.
I know.
Is me wearing my Woodsboro Horror Film Club hoodie today. So I thought
I went in the opposite direction with Return of the Living Dead.
I love it.
A movie I absolutely worship at the throne of.
Yeah, I thought I would be mildly ironic today. So there it is then. There's our top fives. There's our honorable mentions. If you agree with us, if you disagree with us, let us know. I don't want abuse.
I want this discussion to happen.
I don't want abuse from anyone. However, I want to see how much we've kind of triggered people a little bit.
Yes, I'm very curious.
So
especially with me having Suspiria on there, be like, Candy, what? Oh no!
I think between Suspiria
and I think more of Suspiria is going to come into play soon.
Yeah, it will. I think Suspiria. I think The Lost Boys. I think The Shining. I think Freddy vs. Jason, Scream, Army of Darkness. I think X. I think these are all movies that I think have the potential to really ruffle some feathers. So
absolutely.
You know what? Like, let us know any of the movies that we have discussed today. Let us know what you think about them. Let us know if you think we're fucking crazy, because we are. We are. We are. Give us a
rebuttal.
We are fucking crazy. Yeah, have that discussion with us. It's on Twitter at Damn Podcast, Facebook and Instagram Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com. Subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Pod of the Damned. Follow us on TikTok at Podcast of the Damned. We do have more of this episode to come. I'm going to go through some listener mentions, and we're going to just like have a little bit of a chit chat maybe for sort of 20 minutes or so. Candy, remind everyone if they want to reach out to you to talk about these things, where can they find you?
Okay, you can reach me on at Damn Podcast on X, because I'm on there as well. I will be participating a little bit more as I have time before my next trip. Just been out of town a lot. I'm Candy Final Girl on X, and I am Candy the Final Girl on Instagram. I'm always open to DMs as long as you're talking about horror movies. So
yeah, and the same goes for me as well. I don't have access to my personal Twitter account anymore, and I'm just quite happy to sort of let that rot and die. So the best way to reach me is through any of the podcast accounts as well. Anyways, I want to go on to some listener mentions because we do throw these things out as we do with our regular episodes out to our listeners and asking for some of their opinions. I know you've got a couple there as well. I'm going to let you go first, Candy, just in case we've got any crossover because I think I've got quite a lot here. So I'm going to let you go first. What are some of the movies that our listeners have been saying are some of their most overrated?
Well, I'm going to first shout out to my BFF Nico. Nice. My Nico, because when Ian and I are talking, it's his Nico, my Nico. Although his Nico is also kind of my Nico. But anyway, so this is Nico Nice, my best friend. He actually gave me a ranking.
Nice.
His number 5 is Pet Cemetery. His
Okay.
number 4 is Scream.
Yes.
His number 3 is Terrifier, the first one.
Oh.
I know. Number 2 is The Shining. And number 1 is The Exorcist.
Oh, I saw a little bit of
I
like
know. I
I
was like,
did,
ooh.
because I was doing a little bit of research about this and I did see like some Exorcist discourse online. For me, that's not. Oh, that's upsetting.
That's sacrilegious
Uh,
and not and I did not mean to make a pun there.
listen, Nico is someone who is incredibly knowledgeable about horror. Yes, like Nico knows pretty much everything there is to know about horror. He's really good. I hope we can get him back on the show at some point as
Oh,
well.
he's very interested.
Um,
So we're in talks. He's just doing some pre-production and finishing up the casting, getting things ready for his film, which I'm a co-producer on his horror film. So it's gonna be fucking amazing. But he's a busy man, but he absolutely wants to come on the show
yeah.
because he loves everybody on the
Yeah.
show. So
Listen, Nico has been, he has also been on the show previously for anyone who is wondering. Go back and check out the old bucket list horror series of episodes that we used to do. Nico was on that talking, I think it was about an American werewolf in London. So
which
do,
is his favorite film of all time.
do honestly go check that out. Nico is great. Even though I disagree with a couple of things on Nico's list there,
Yeah, I do too. I do too. He knows it.
but you know, I'll give him the kudos for the inclusion of Scream there. Awesome. Any others for you?
Yes. This was I don't know if this was under our podcast one or my personal
Okay.
one. So this was Jack at Lack of Surprise One on X. He says it follows. Interesting concept, but it fell kind of flat for me because pretty much every character was a teeny horror cliche. I couldn't care about what was happening when I didn't care about the characters. And then he follows that up with Smile, a genuinely cool idea for a horror movie that devolved into a paint by numbers horror movie. I felt as though I felt as though they had a good idea but didn't know what to do with it, and the ending was kind of meh for me. So again, if I stole that from our from the damn
No,
podcast, I'm so sorry.
no. I think that was your one anyway. I don't have that one down. So
Okay, and now my other one I have to dig out because my phone is not very organized.
well, I'll
Um,
let you dig that out quickly. I'll do a couple while you're digging that out. Um, Graveyard Garrett. I mean, all the ones I have are just people listing their movies. Graveyard Garrett listed Scream, The Conjuring, and The Ring. So very much someone after my own heart, clearly. Harker Jones had It Follows down there. LRJ Allen, who is a horror author who has also been on the show, the Bucket List horror episodes, said The Babadook. Galileo Jones, who's a friend of the show, put The Nun, The Conjuring, and any M. Night Shyamalan movie.
I
um,
think that's a little harsh.
I think so too, but I can see where Galileo's coming from with some M. Night Shyamalan movies, shall we say. Um, the,
Some,
the
yes.
team over at Stu World Order had Midsummer, Pearl, and the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Dear God, what? It was like 3 shots straight to my heart with an arrow, like not in a love way, but in a trying to kill me way.
um, Movies for days.
No, no shade to you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I was offensive. I just was very shocked
our
by that. What?
our friend Newman over at Movies for Days had Midsummer, Teeth, Martyrs. Now I'm gonna assume they mean the original Martyrs because the remake is
No.
absolutely not beloved. And
I just showed
Terrifier.
that to my son for the first time and he fucking loved it.
I adore that movie. I fucking love Martyrs. I
Me
fuck with
too.
that
We
movie.
need to cover martyrs.
We definitely will be at some point. And Terrifier. Put Terrifier on there as well. That's a shame. Friend of the show, previous guest Sarah Marie says the Babadook as well. And finally, saving Ren for last from me. Our very good dear friend of the show, Ren, has The Blair Witch Project, Rosemary's Baby, Suspiria. Again, I'm assuming the original Suspiria, and the
And he
entire
didn't specify 2018, so I'll give him a
didn't specify,
pass.
and the entire Terrifier franchise, which is to be expected
Well,
from
we
Ren.
knew that was
We
coming.
knew that was coming. Did you manage to find your last one there, Candy?
Yeah, I just had one more and they didn't rank them.
Okay.
They just kind of listed
Okay.
five. This is from Nice Bizarre Cinema on Instagram. It follows, and I want to pause here for a second. Isn't it amazing how many times It Follows has come up?
It pops
And
up.
that movie, yeah, that movie was fucking disappointing.
Yeah.
It was lame. Yeah, sorry. It Follows, The Sixth Sense, My Bloody Valentine, 1981. They specified that.
Okay.
Hostel, Crimson Peak.
Okay, that's an interesting list. I don't think Hostel.
Yeah, that was kind of.
I kind of fuck with Hostel. That's
I
kind of.
fuck with Hostel. I fuck with Hostel too, even.
Yeah, so do I. I fuck with Hostel too. Hostel
But
3.
not. I do not fuck with Hostel 3.
No,
Absolutely
fuck
not.
that movie. But I definitely fuck with Hostel.
I love Eli Roth. I would run
Yeah,
away with him and stare into his eyes for.
That's an interesting 5 movies there though. That's definitely
They're
interesting.
kind of, yeah. And to specify, like when I hear My Bloody Valentine, I would assume it would be the 3D piece of
Yeah,
shit.
that's what I
It was
would have
only
gone
cool
for.
because Tom Atkins was in it. But like the original one, I was kind of a shock, honestly.
Sixth Sense is one that I saw a lot of discourse about. I saw that one being brought up quite a lot. Along with It Follows.
I loved it. I
saw
still
those two.
do.
I think Sixth Sense is fine. I think it's alright. Yeah.
I saw it in the theater when it first came out, and it was great then.
Yeah.
I think in the time since, yeah, it's not as great.
Yeah. So yeah, there we go. Thank you to everyone who has sent us in your opinions, your thoughts. Like I say, you can do that for any of our episode topics, whether that's a specific movie that we're going to be talking about, whether that's one of these top 5s. And I'm really, really glad we've managed to do another one of these top 5 episodes because they're always so much fun. And we will hopefully get to do many, many more in the future. And I think it's all, again, I think we said this last time, it's always nice to sort of mix up our format a little bit and for us to do something just a little bit different to what we normally do week in and week out as well. But thank you very much to everyone for doing that. Now, Candy, before we came on air, you said that you had a few pieces of memorabilia that you wanted to share with us. For those of you who are listening to this on the podcast, you can go and view this video on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/podofthedamned. It is just £1 to subscribe up and you'll be supporting the show. You get early access to all of our episodes. You get the early access to all the video recordings of our episodes as well, so you can physically see us.
And they're pretty fun because I do some crazy shit with my eyebrows, and I always like to wear some like cool shirts. So even if you're just coming for the fashion.
And every once in a while, we will record some exclusive content for there as well. We'll record a little piece that comes after the episode every once in a while when we find the time to be able to do that. So there is perks to being there. And like I say, it's just £1. If you're in the States, it's $1.50. You know, it's really not a lot of money. And you help support the show. You help us pay for our sort of basic bills, things like our Zoom bills, and stuff like that. So thank you very much to the people who do support us on Patreon already. Thank you very much. But yeah, you said you were going to
very much appreciate it.
Yeah, you said you were going to share some pieces of memorabilia with us. I'm very excited to see what they are.
There's one I want to go get.
Okay.
And I'll do that. I can do it now.
It's entirely up to you. It's entirely up to you.
Okay, give me one quick second. I'll go grab one thing. I did mention it when we were talking, so I gotta grab it now.
Okay, cool, awesome.
I apologize for that.
That's all right. Welcome
Um,
back.
so I'll go ahead and show this off. This was the original set that came out
Oh,
for Nightmare on Elm Street early in the DVD days. So like in the DVDs, they're like the kind that um as in you get with the early DVDs, like they open like this.
yes, I
They have
love
the
that.
little,
I love it.
and I'm a big fan of Freddy's Dead. And what's cool about this set is it comes with the 3D glasses
Oh,
for the
love
parts
it.
in Freddy's Dead. So I still have those. I have not ever used them. Nightmare on Elm Street on the sides.
Yes.
So for the part where she's doing the thing at the end, um, and it's when she puts on the like glasses to like go into like Freddy's brain or whatever. So but the great thing about this set is Freddy versus Jason hadn't come out. It has a really amazing booklet with it too. This is in great condition because um when my stepfather passed away, unfortunately, um he had this and he had never ever opened or watched any of it. Now I have opened it because I like to fuck with it a little bit, but it has this really great, like the artwork is from New Nightmare, which was the last movie, technically for me, the last movie in the series.
Yeah, I mean,
But it has
I
some
would
really
still
great
qualify it
information.
as the last movie in the franchise.
Yeah, so it has everything like starting from the first one all the way to New Nightmare. And then it has the Nightmare series encyclopedia in it, which is
Oh,
like an extra bonus feature.
I love that.
Um, but yeah, I love I'm a big fan of Freddy's Dead. I know that's a topic for another day. But the fact that I
That's a
do
hot take. Yeah.
yeah, this set alone is worth a lot of money
Hmm.
because it is out of print. This was done a long time ago, like I said, early in DVD days. And the fact that I have the 3D glasses,
Yeah.
which the specific Nightmare on Elm Street ones, and they came with this set.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have a newer set that's like upgraded, like it's a Blu-ray set, but it is just it has fucking Freddy versus Jason in it. Now I thought for my next item, I thought I was going to be the first person on this particular episode to bring up Terrifier, but apparently I was not.
No.
I have Terrifier 2,
Love it.
the 4K edition. It's signed by Damian Leone, who I met, and very serious guy when you meet him.
Hmm.
But he is signed my copy. And it says "Stay terrified," blah blah blah, and he signed his name, and underneath it he writes writer, director, and effects. So he takes himself very very seriously, but this is very cool. Um, my next thing that I didn't have when we did the bucket list horror. I love Paul Bearer Press. They
Yeah.
are run by two guys. I they're up there. I mean, I order most of my horror stuff from either Fright Rags or Paul Bearer Press. Paul Bearer Press does like a lot of gory shit, but they have really cool figures from time to time. Now I'm very friendly with them. So they had Disco Boy from
Yes.
Maniac,
Love that.
Tom Savini's character who gets his head blown off, where he's like, well, I kind of want to blow off my own head because of the effects. So they made the character of Disco Boy, and Tom Savini signed it. And they're numbered, it's 18 of 100 that were made. So
There's very
Disco
few of them.
Boy, Tom Savini, and him with his porn stash and everything. I know the sun's shining on it a little bit, but it is even the box is fucking cool.
Yeah, that looks
Um,
great.
it's really amazing. The next two are going to be George Romero related. Um, I got this set for Day of the Dead, and as we all know, well, I'm a huge Romero fan. I know, and anybody who everybody's seen fucking Day of the Dead, and it was shot in Florida. All the movies were shot wherever George Romero was living at the time. So by the time Day of the Dead came out, he had moved to Florida from um Pennsylvania. So because he was in Pittsburgh forever. So this is called Day of the Dead, Dead Rock. When it was shot in the caves that they were in, there they were it was like a quarry, and these are the actual stones from that
Oh,
quarry.
all right.
So that's one of my favorite things.
Oh, that's so cool, and like you, that's such like a
Yeah, and they're all
unique.
like authorized. So got that. And this is one of my, I'm so proud of this. Fright Rags put out I collect my lunch boxes anyway. I have since I was a kid. Um, and so I've never used this in any other capacity but to have it signed. It's got a really cool thermos in it. Um, but I happen to be very lucky to meet the people that are still living from the cast. I met Russ Striner, who played Johnny, and he signed here. They all signed in green, which was amazing because it's all just done in green and black. And it says they're coming to get you, Candy, by Russ Striner, and it says Johnny underneath. Um, and then I met Judith O'Day, who played Barbara, and she
Yes.
put Helpless Candy. And I met Judith Ridley, who played Judy, and she signed right here. This sits up with my highest collecting stuff. This is one thing I'm very, very proud of. Because I have like a whole Romero thing. And another thing I'll have to show it at a different time because it's kind of got a lot of pieces. Is another Fright Rags exclusive that has to do with Night of the Living Dead. But that's what I got for you folks today.
Well, that's absolutely awesome. You know, it's one thing that being such a huge horror fan that I've been for the majority of my life is that it's one area that I wish I had done more of is invest in sort of collectible pieces and that. And I do, my collection comes from physical media. It comes from items of clothing. You can see behind me, it comes from sort of wall art. That's where my collection lies. I don't have any real sort of collectibles from things like that. So I always love seeing some of the things and some of the pieces that you bring to the show as well. And because there's stories, like there's always a story behind it. There's always like that chance meeting. There's the meetings with all these people. You're getting to say there, Damien Leone, for example, is like a really serious guy, and we get a little insight into what these people are like, and I really love that. So thank you so much for bringing those pieces. Those are fucking cool. I love the rocks. They that just like
That
tickles.
I was so blown away just to own that, to have had that from the Wampum Mines. Um, I like sort of what they put on there. The contents of this jar were excavated from the Wampum Mines filming location of the 1985 film Day of the Dead. Care has been taken to remove any existing brains, guts, or blood from these samples that may remain and could possibly infect you with the zombie virus.
I love that. I love that so much because that's like
So I have a jar of rocks.
because people will people will collect figurines, and people will collect
Oh, I got plenty of those too.
apparel, and that's great. I love it. I love all that, but that's like such a unique thing that so few people have. And then of course, like going figurines, your Disco Boy one there, there's so few of them in the world. Like you say,
Oh
there's
yeah.
only 100, and that's great. I fucking love it. So yeah, thank you so much for bringing them on the show. I hope people watching this and listening to this, appreciate like just how fucking cool some of those items are, because they're fucking awesome, and I am very very jealous of your collection.
Well, let me tell you, it's an expensive hobby.
It is an
But
expensive hobby. I
but
will
like
back you up
when
with that.
I had my daughter when I was 20, not quite 21, and so I've been a mom since then, and those early days were really tough financially. But once my daughter got to be about 13, our finances changed dramatically
Hmm.
due to just certain events and promotions and things from Sean's job. So he indulges me in a lot of things. Sometimes I track down. I have a lot. I'm not going to spoil some of the other cool things I have, but they're pretty cool, and I will show those at another date. But I have some very very neat pieces.
I do plan on massively sort of expanding, because I had a huge physical media collection at one point. And I kind of whittled that down, and I've moved house a few times, and things have gotten lost and damaged. So my hot my
Yeah,
my
that happens.
my physical media collection is not like as big as it once was. So I do plan on sort of doing that again. So that I may in future just bring on some random, and I mean usually for me it is just bog standard DVDs. It's not even Blu-rays. It's not
But
even
I have
special
some
editions.
tips and tricks for you that I will share in procuring some of these certain
Yeah,
editions that I'll share with you that help me
I
tremendously
mean like
to
don't
get
get me
my hands
wrong.
on like certain books or
Yeah,
certain pieces of physical media. Like I own 3 copies of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because they all have different features and they're in different formats. I have 2 copies of the 2003 one because I had to have the one with the chainsaw, but then I have the updated steelbook, and
yeah.
so I'm with people. I have like 4 versions of mini movies.
Yeah. So I do plan, like I said, I do plan on, so I may come on and start sharing some of those pieces, even if it is
That would
just
be cool.
even if it's just bog standard DVDs, just be like, hey, look at this piece of shit movie that I bought today.
That's awesome though.
you know,
No, hey, I dig it. My movie collection is pretty legendary. Like
I,
it takes over my whole living room is just autographs and pictures of me with celebrities and all of my collectibles.
I,
That's how my
yeah.
house is decorated.
I might go through what I have left of my physical music collections. I do have a few out there movies in there, so I might go through some of that, and maybe in the next episode I'll bring on some of my more out there movies, and we'll
I
see. We'll
almost
see.
get like a sexual turn on when I can find a really like hard to find out of print movie. That was a weird way to put it. Like it's very hard to find out of print movie that somebody doesn't know what it's worth, and I get it for like $2,
Yeah.
and I'm like, holy fuck, this movie like it is impossible to find. So I get a real big thrill from it.
Yeah, quite right too. Quite right too. Well, like I say, thank you very much for bringing those pieces on. They were absolutely fascinating. There's some really cool stuff there, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, I think that's probably going to be about it for this week's show. We've once again done the 2 hour mark, which I think is just a common feature for us now. I think our last episode we did that we did at the time of recording, which was on Shaun of the Dead. We also hit the 2 hour mark, and I did have a feeling that of all the movies that we actually reviewed, that was one that we were going to talk about for a little bit longer.
There's so
Anyway.
much to say. Yeah.
We have tons though coming up on the show. We have got a lot for you guys to look forward to. I'm not. It's no secret. I'm not sure because I'm not 100% sure of the release date yet of this episode. So we either have just reviewed or will have coming up very very shortly episodes on Pearl and Maxine.
Yes.
So and hence why I didn't want to go into a huge amount of detail as to my discussions on X and it being part of my top 5 most overrated horror movie. There will be another poll going up as well, asking you guys what the next top 5 uh, horror movie discussion topic should be. I worded that absolutely terribly, but everyone knows what I mean. So do feel free to let us know where you want us to go with this series, because we would like your input as much as the next. But we have a few ideas of our own, so we'll probably throw a couple of them into the polls as well. But we'll let you guys decide like we did with this one as well. But yeah, we've got some really really fucking cool movies. We're taking, like I say, depending on when this is released, we're going to be taking a break from our regular sort of scheduled rotation of episodes for a couple of weeks so that we can do Pearl and then Maxine when that gets released, because we're very excited to talk about that. And
Oh my God, yes.
I'm very excited to see where I'm still excited to see where the franchise goes, despite my general feelings about it. But I'm more excited for the discussion that we're gonna have, and the discussion that we're gonna have with our listeners and viewers as well, and see
Yeah,
what they
the
think of
buzz
it.
is big on Maxine, so
The buzz is really big.
I'm so fucking curious. I wish I could go see it like right now.
Look, at this point, at the time of recording, we are slap bang at the halfway mark of 2024. Half of 2024 has come and gone, and we have some huge movies still to come out this year. I'm really fucking excited for it. We've got some massive things coming. Not just this. We kind of briefly talked about it after we finished recording Shaun of the Dead episode, but whether it's Maxine, whether it's whether it's Alien Romulus, whether it's Nosferatu, whether it's Terrifier 3, whether it's Beetlejuice 2. There's some huge movies that have got a huge amount of buzz about it this year, and I'm really
And I'm
excited.
excited for all of those movies.
Yeah.
I've been waiting. I've been actually waiting for this halfway mark because I'm like, no, we're getting what I want
Well,
now.
it does kind of feel like, because I feel like over the last couple of years we've gotten like one of those sort of big hitters of the year out of the way really early, and
Right.
it's possibly because the two Scream films in their years were released right at the start of the year.
Yes.
I think Evil Dead was. I don't think I'm wrong in saying Evil Dead Rise was an earlier
Evil Dead
release.
Rise came out like I think
Yeah, I
March
think that
of
was
that
like a
year.
spring
So yeah,
release,
pretty
wasn't it?
early.
And they were big hitters for their years. So I'm really looking forward to the second half of this year. We're going to be covering as much of these brand new movies as possible. We're going to try between the three of us to get them all seen and get reviews out to you guys as soon as we possibly can, because I think there's a lot of big hitters. And if there's some smaller movies out there, who that maybe don't think there's as big a buzz, I'll still try and get some minisodes out for those ones as well. And then when the year end comes, who knows who's going to be walking away with all of our awards this year? I
Yeah, I'm
genuinely.
curious because I think, not having seen some of these movies I'm really, really excited about that are coming up, I'm just curious, like, yeah, at the end of the year, where are we going to be?
Well, that's the thing. 'Cause, like, if even though it's not it, I'm not really fucking with the franchise too much as well. I think unless it completely shits the bed, I think Maxine's going to get a huge amount of love anyway. I think Nosferatu's going to have to do something really fucking special. Otherwise, I think it's in danger because of the IP that it is, because of the topic of it. I think that's got such a difficult job to win everyone over.
Plus, it's coming out near Terrifier 3.
Yeah,
So
and
Terrifier 3 is going to
I
be,
think
a big
some
thing.
some Terrifier fans, I genuinely don't think it really matters what you put on screen as long as Art the Clown is just fucking chopping up bodies, and they will absolutely love it. So
Yes.
it's one of those things, isn't it? Depending on the movie, I have no doubt that technically Nosferatu will probably be a better movie than Terrifier 3.
Well, Robert
However,
Eggers puts a lot of, I mean, I loved The Witch. I
mm-hmm,
loved The Northman. I really love his films,
mm-hmm.
but they're a different kind of film.
Yeah,
They're very
100%.
moody, they're very, ambient. So it's a different kind of, so like up against something like Terrifier 3, which is just, all guts and craziness, and Art the Clown's like our new slasher king, and God, we needed that.
Oh, so
But up
did.
there also with Mia Goth, Mia Goth is a big slasher person now. So we're getting some good slasher stuff. So it's hard to compare that to something like Robert Eggers type of film.
Yeah.
Like The Witch, a lot of people were like, it was too dark, it was too this, it was too that. It's not for everybody. Whereas, some of these movies like just go for the gusto, and sometimes they can overshadow.
Yeah,
So
and
that, I mean, that's my prediction, but I could be wrong.
yeah, that's the thing. That's the beauty of this thing. And like you say, we've got Beetlejuice 2 coming out as well, which there's a
Yeah, I'm
huge
very excited
there's a
about it.
huge amount of hype around that. I think purely down to the fact that Michael Keaton is returning for that movie. If they had tried to do it without Michael Keaton returning,
Winona Ryder,
yeah,
like
Catherine O'Hara, who
Catherine O'Hara.
I adore Catherine
Oh
O'Hara
my God,
so
yes.
fucking much. She is
She's a
just
goddess.
she is
She's so funny.
incredible. She's beautiful. She's so funny. Like she
Yeah.
is like just what an icon she is. So I'm so excited that they're
Plus,
coming
we've
back.
got Justin Theroux mixed into the in there.
Plus, we have
We've got a couple of
We've
new
got
characters.
Jenna Ortega in there
Got Jenna Ortega
again.
in there.
You
And
know,
who else would be perfect to play Winona Ryder's
oh,
daughter? I
it's
think that was
perfect
excellent
casting.
casting.
Perfect casting.
Yes.
So there's so much to look forward to this year. And we've been banging on about it for years and years now, about this sort of golden age of horror that we're going through, and I think 2024 is gonna live up to that as well. I
And
think
I'm
they'll
just fucking eating it up like it's a can of Pringles.
well
I'm sorry,
I
I'm
had
with the
been
Pringles.
a little worried in the last sort of year and a half that we were maybe just starting to see ourselves slip down a little bit, because we'd had such a huge few years of some really fucking great horror movies. We really saw the sort of dawn of horror movies finally getting taken seriously. I think that's something that's really sort of come out in the past sort of 5 to 10 years, maybe even a little long. Is that horror movies are really.
With elevated horror, and I think Ari Aster really did a lot for
Mm-hmm.
A24 and made it this huge giant.
Oh,
So
100%.
A24 is something to fuck with.
Yeah, 100%. And then, they because up until, we were sort of suffering with just Blumhouse and, what they've been
Yeah,
putting out.
Blumhouse, I love the black phone, but Blumhouse mostly can fuck all the way off. It's not horror. It's horror for the masses. It's not horror for the fans. Do
Yeah,
you understand what I mean?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
They're entry level horrors. That's what they are. They're horrors that.
Yeah, like Megan. Oh my
Oh,
God.
don't get me started on
Yeah.
Megan.
I better
I'll
not
tell
get
I'll tell
started.
you one person who really fucking liked Megan. It was Nico.
I guess I short when you said that, I was like, no, what? Yeah, yeah.
It's one of the movies where we've had like the most disparity in between our scores. He fucking gave that score up in the eight. He gave that movie up in the eights.
You've got to what?
Yeah, he gave that. It was up in the eights. What he gave that movie. I gave it a 3, and I thought I was being generous.
Yeah, I can't remember what I wrote down, but yeah, it's not nice. It's not.
I'm very hopeful that when we get round to it as part of your catch up, that you're going to knock it down quite a number of spaces. So
I have a feeling I will because it's not a nice number.
no,
It's a pretty low number.
okay, that's fine then. But yeah, so all of this excitement around what's coming up in the rest of 2024, we're really excited. Not only will we be covering all these great movies, but we'll still be covering all your classics that we have yet to cover. We'll be covering all your sequels. We'll be covering all the shit that we haven't covered yet as well, because on Pod of the Damned, we like to cover movies from every single genre and every single quality level there is, because we don't really care if it's good or bad. We just love talking about horror movies so fucking much.
Exactly. Yes.
We will be talking about more of these top fives. Hopefully, we'll be getting some guests back on the show later in the second half of the year as well. I think
Yeah, we're definitely gonna get my Nico or Nico
we're
Nice
definitely gonna get your
back
Nico
on.
on. We're definitely gonna have Ren back on. Hopefully, we can get Sarah back on as
We'll get
well.
Sarah back on. Yes,
And we
absolutely.
can hopefully reach out and get some other people back on the show as well.
And
Yeah,
definitely have some people who are interested.
absolutely. If you are interested, and we especially if we already have some sort of working relationship, if you are interested, drop us a message as well. Like, let us know. We took a
Get
bit.
Newman back on, definitely.
Absolutely,
He's so funny.
Newman's so
Oh my
great.
God, he's so funny.
Yeah, we took a bit of a break from taking people on while we settled in, earlier in the year, and we trying just to make sure that we sort of kept our rhythm going, and we absolutely have done that. So, but like I think in the second half of the year, yeah, we'll definitely be looking to get some guests back on the show and talk about some other topics. Keep going with the top fives, and just hopefully keep growing the show, and hopefully you all enjoy the journey, because that's what we're on together. So.
Yeah, and everyone just prepare yourselves because once we do Pearl and Maxine, I've got a real treat for you. And I'll let you wonder if it's a good movie or if it's one of my crazy gorehound or giallo or exploitation films. It's a mystery. We'll just let you sit on that one.
I think maybe we should start maybe we should start votes amongst what our picks are for the month, and just go see what people go with, because there will definitely be people who are now absolutely fucking with episodes where you're picking your love for Italian horror and your Romero. There will be people out there who absolutely adore the shit that Nico picks sometimes on this show.
Oh yeah,
Even
yeah.
though
I think we all have our people that like, oh yeah, Ian's got this, and oh Candy, we don't know what the fuck. Oh, okay. And then Nico, like, of course Nico picked that. Yes.
apart from the one time where he shocked us with
Yes.
Let the Right One In.
I really thought that was your pick. I honestly did.
Apart from the one time. And we've had yet another episode where we've managed to slip in a little bit of chat about Terrifier as well. So I'm very happy.
Yeah, I had to throw it in there. I didn't know if we'd mentioned it. So I was like, I better bring out my signed Terrifier 2 copy.
I may go and watch that as well. I talked about maybe going and watch People Under the
God, that is
Stairs.
such a fun movie to watch.
I
And
may
at one point, I promise I'll sing the Clown Cafe song.
maybe we could do that when Terrifier 3 comes out.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put it in there because I do a pretty good rendition.
Anyways, with that being said, a very, very quick reminder of where people can find us. We're on Twitter at Damn Podcast. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Just search for Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com and subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Pod of the Damned. And you can follow us on TikTok at Podcast of the Damned. The links to all of those are in the description for this episode. And if you go on to one of our social medias, the links to the rest of them will also be there. So please go and give us a follow. I'm really, really pleased that our Instagram follow, we're really starting to sort of grow on Instagram. And that's really, really pleasing for me because I think that's the platform forward now for social media as
That's
well.
like my favorite platform to use, so I'm usually on there. I get on X, um, to kind of say something, but I'm kind of like on Instagram, I'm doing a lot of really fun shit, so check it out.
Yeah, I mean, like when I had the old show and when I started this show, like X was the thing I used the most, and that's where we got like most of our
Yeah.
growth from, and especially with the old show, we really grew on X like to quite some size, when that was at its
So
sort of
did we.
peak.
Yeah, it
Um,
blew up
but
because of
obviously,
Shutter and Joe Bob.
yeah, but obviously, X is X is on the way out. Let's be real. It's more and more people are leaving that platform every day, and I think Instagram's
And
definitely
Instagram is so much fun. There's so many cool ways that you can put
yeah.
questions or graphics, or I like to use creative songs and AI stickers that like are wild. So yeah, check out my Instagram. Like I said, Candy Funnel Girl. It's usually where I'm at. I do a lot of fun stuff about the show there.
Yeah. So please go and check those out. As I said, I'm not sure what actual date this episode's being released, so we've either just released or just coming up our episodes of Maxine and Pearl, so please go check them out if they've already been released. If they've not, please check them out when they do. Go check out our Shaun of the Dead episode as well, because that was fucking blast to record. And
Oh my God, amazing.
go check out all of our other great movies that we've reviewed too. Recently we've done Zombie, we've done Bloodbath at the House of Death, but you can go all the way back to episode number 1 where me and Nico had that chat about Doctor Sleep. We've got well over 100 episodes now worth of content for you guys to go and check out. Hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of content. So please
A
do
lot of
go
people
check
tell
out the
me
show.
it gets them through their workday, and I love you guys for saying that.
Yeah, like people have told me that that we're what they put on in the gym. What you listen to your commutes on the way home, and we
Or
love.
when they're having a bad day, it makes them laugh.
Yeah,
I
we
love hearing that.
we absolutely do. So please do send us reviews of the shows. I mean, if you think there's things that we can do better, if there's things that you think or suggestions that things that you would like to see added to the show, send us those as well, because we're number one, we're not above criticism.
Oh no,
And number two, we're
I have a
constantly
lot of work to do.
and number two, we are constantly looking for ways to improve the show and aspects to add, because we want to keep it fresh for you guys as well, whilst sort of retaining our sort of true core, if you
Or
will.
any ideas of things you'd like to hear us talk about, or lists you'd like us to give, or anything like that.
100%. So, with that being said, though, thank you to everyone for downloading and listening to this episode. Thank you very, very much, Candy, for joining me for another one of these top fives. It's been a blast as always.
It really has been. Thanks so much for having me.
And until next week on the Pod of the Damned, just remember, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.